Seeing that it's 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call to order the, Village of Belleville, Village Board Meeting of Trustees for June 2nd, 2025. 6 o'clock, and we're gonna start the Pledge of Allegiance, which is, where's the flag again? Out in the hallway?
It is, it's in that corner.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, legacy from Florida.
If you want to do roll call.
I can, President Larson. Or President Zervis, sorry.
Here.
Trustee Bannon. Here. Trustee Baumgart.
Here.
Trustee Eichelkraut.
Here.
Trustee Kazmar. Trustee Ward.
Here.
And trustee Steve.
Here.
Alright. Your quorum.
All right. Confirmation of open meeting compliance.
It is, posted according to law.
Right. Public participation allows citizens to be heard on any agenda and non-agenda item. The public may also comment during the public participation section of each item. The village board shall make no decisions or consideration of action of citizen comments for items not on the agenda, except to refer the matter to the village administrator for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for board consideration at a later date. Is there anyone here that would like to make a comment? Judy?
Commented, I'll hold my questions until the next meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member requests it, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered the first item after the approval of the consent agenda. And we have one item on there, the village board meetings from May 19th, meeting minutes from May 19th, 2025.
I make a motion to approve the meeting.
Motion by Maxine, second by Debbie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. President's report. The only thing I'd like to comment on is that there was, we had our first ever chalk walk over the weekend, which was a little art event, decorating the sidewalk. So it was supposed to coincide with the reveal of our new mural, but weather didn't play along with us in timing. So we had a wonderful chalk walk though, and turnout was great. And I hope that we can do it again in the future. So staff reports.
I don't have any.
Nothing. All right. On to our first item of business, is old business. Discuss and consider the 2025-2035 fire and EMS intergovernmental agreement, which is why we are all here tonight. Following up from our last meeting where I recall correctly, we finished up with getting together a new draft, getting that in front of all of the communities to review and provide any feedback. Do you want to add anything, Dave? So did everybody get a chance to review it, I assume? Is there any comments?
Oh, first of all, we're at Town of Montrose. We have two new supervisors in our township. So they may not be familiar with, what was discussed at that time.
Do you want to
And I
give,
wasn't on the board either.
do you want to give a synopsis of
Yeah,
changes?
the village has proposed a new fire EMS agreement. Not a ton has really changed in kind of the structure wise. Kind of just a different order of things. The biggest conversation from the last meeting was how does the budgets kind of derived from? And we talked about making it calls of service. I think it was land area and population. This group as a whole decided to take calls of service out of that, and so that is what was in the attachment that you all received. An annual audit we requested each year, changing from district chair to district president, or district, from district president to district chair. Some of it just kind of minor stuff. Defined operating, defined capital, have laid out what the annual budget process would be. And then we did it based on a percentage of budget capacity. So if we're paying, the village is paying 40-some%, Montrose is paying whatever percent, Oregon's saying, your voting percentage is based on the budget percentage that you were paying. And then, but you cannot, but I am remembering the annual budget and the capital expenditures are being passed when 80% has done that. But we cannot go over a certain number, 60%.
Yeah.
So yes, that was kind of the biggest stuff. If anybody else remembers anything more about anything else.
Meeting days, we're gonna go to every other month, I think we
Yeah.
talked about that, so.
Fires based on this, keeping the same as total assessed. EMS is based on population. Yeah. The biggest conversation from the last time was how is the budget gonna be decided? How is the voting shares gonna be derived?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So under officers, it says, you know, the board will elect a chairman, blah, 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 and it says that they're gonna rotate among the municipalities. Is that really needed when they have elections every year? I mean, people are nominated and voted in. I mean, does it absolutely have to rotate if it's working the way it is? Are we reinventing the wheel?
I think that's something that this body can talk about.
Is it every year? I think it's, I thought it was every 2 years.
Sessions every,
Right?
Period of 1 year is what it states.
in here.
But it could change. But as it states 1 year, and I think the conversation that the village board had at the time was that it's just each municipality has a chance to have
Somebody,
somebody in that.
I guess I thought they did now with the nominations and then they second it and they vote them in. Missing something?
I-
Anybody?
Ted, do you know? So for Exeter, you guys have elections every other year, correct? Or every 2 years?
Yeah, we're talking officers of the association.
Right, right. But I think,
Elections for this board, oversight board, district boards every year, every June.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
that's what I thought. So
okay.
That's
I
what
guess we
that
had an
was.
election process at the
Agreement.
where we-
Sure, yes.
I mean, is that process not working? Ted, Steve,
That's the wish of the village. No, it's working fine in my opinion.
so this is the village wanting this.
That's the village request.
Gary, you got anything to add to that since you're on the district?
No, I mean, yeah, it was, the original document the village proposed was kind of a wish list of everything. You know, in our opinion, it was a negotiation. Yeah, there are things, I know, as we've discussed with the board, there are things that, yeah, we put them in. If it flies, it flies. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There were certain things that we were definitely looking for out of this agreement, and I could really care less who the president of the district board is, but you know, because there are bigger fish to fry than that, so.
Could this section be rewritten to just state that, you know, basically state what you're doing right now, if there'll be an election held every year to nominate,
Nominate,
you know, a chairperson and vice chairperson.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
elections will be held every year for these positions, all you need to say, yeah.
I was just questioning the rotating, because whoever gets nominated,
Well, there are
It's.
there are groups, and again, and I can think of half dozen off the top of my head that's what, you know, they're, the group, or you rotate, you know, you're in an office for so many years, and then, you know, the vice president moves up in 2 years, and, you know, so that was kind of where this came from. Again, it's done that way in a lot of places, other places it's not, you know, it's somebody's in that position for 20 years, you know, so.
Ted, did you have a comment?
Well, I got some general comments if you're ready.
yeah, please,
Absolutely.
go for it.
Go for it.
Get this discussion rolling.
Okay, we'll do that, all right. I've been privileged to be in this district board for 32 years. I guess I got seniority, maybe Rogers got more seniority than I got. The first 15 years, Bill O'Connor was president, we did rotate. Bill was the second 15 years of my 32, Roger was, and 2 years ago I became president of the district. Over those 32 years, I believe there was a certain point in time when Montrose was maybe the largest player of the municipalities for a short period. And there was also, I believe, a brief period when Exeter was the biggest player, both in population and valuation. And now Belleville obviously is on a huge growth spurt, so. But my point there in stating that is that no time during those 32 years at Exeter or Montrose ever has to have more voting authority within the 8 members of the district board, right, Roger? Which appears to be the issue at hand right now. As I read through the revised document from 2 months ago, it's camouflaged in there, but Belleville, the village of Belleville, I believe, is asking for veto power on any decision over $5,000. This disguised as unanimous voting or 100% voting, whatever you want to call it. At no time, I guess, can I think of any governing board that needs 100% voting on any issue? I don't believe you do that in your budget process, 100% voting authority. And if you read through the document as presented, that's how I interpret it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't believe I'm wrong.
what page is that on?
It's camouflaged in different pages. 401. Page 9. So I think that would get us at this meeting tonight. I'd also like to say that the intergovernmental agreement was last updated in 2017. And since 2017, things have changed, mostly on the EMS side with the addition of paid staffing. And so, obviously there is a need to update this agreement at some level to address the changes in the environment that we're in. To do that, about a year and a half ago, I appointed a committee to look and review this 2017 agreement. I appointed the vice president of the district, Steve Miller, sitting next to me as the chairman of this subcommittee, to analyze, go through it in detail and see what needs to be changed, what could be changed, and at some point bring the revised document back to the 5 municipalities. The process was slowed down a bit because of one of the hangups with waiting for an audit to be finalized, which was finalized in January of this year, which Steve can address at some point here this evening too. But that was part of the process why the audit was, or why the revised, updated edition was not presented to the board. Another issue I'd like to bring up, there's been some inconsistencies from the village throughout these last 2 years, and I'd like to point to a couple of them. The annual audit versus the 3-year audit. Now, back in January, we had a discussion at our monthly meeting. The village rep made a motion to do a 3-year audit. And, seconded and passed unanimously. Yet in March, we get the letter from the village, of the district, saying repeatedly use an annual audit, annual audit, annual audit. Yet your own board members made the motion to do a 3-year audit. So here we are, you know, inconsistency there. And the same inconsistency was addressed through the capital audit. The board in January voted, and again, as a member of the village board made a motion not to do a capital audit and save some money. Figuring that it wasn't needed. Again, in the revised memo that was sent out in March, you listed the need for a capital audit. Yet your own board members made the motion not to do a capital audit. So some inconsistency is following through. We can work through those, not a big deal, but we're getting mixed messages, and that's kind of hung up the process of updating this agreement, because we're getting mixed messages from the village. So one of the 2 items that kind of caught my attention, and I'm just gonna say, we realize the village is growing, and can kind of understand that you want to have more ownership, or you want to have more power in decision making. But I believe there's 5 municipalities involved in this, 3 larger ones and 2 smaller ones. I respect the opinion of both the larger ones and smaller municipalities. They're all elected officials. And I think it's worked fine for 32 years that I've been on the board. I just think that if we go down this path of having one municipality on veto power, it's not a good thing for the district. So with that said, I guess that kind of addresses my thoughts.
Thank you.
So is the village looking for 60% of the voting power?
Well, it's veto power, in my opinion. Right?
I mean,
Well-
this is my first time on the board with this. That's why I'm
No,
asking the question.
I'm sure it is.
So the village is asking for the portion that they have, and what this body agreed at the last meeting was no municipality can go above 60%. So eventually, somebody's gonna get there, but that's not what we're asking for now. What we're asking for is based on your budget percentage, is based on your voting percentage.
But 60% is veto power.
80% is good. Once you have 80%, that's how.
If you have 60% of the voting stock, which is what you say your stock is.
We're not saying that.
No, we're not saying. May I add something, Mr. President?
Yeah, go ahead.
This document here indicates 2/3 in the language presented here. It doesn't say anything about 80%.
Are you using the previous version?
I'm using the revised one that came out in March, which is, I read through it, is exactly the same one that I got from my town clerk, May 30th. The old agreement was under operating budget was 2/3. Under capital, it was, and then of those 2/3, Montrose, Belleville, Exeter each got 2 votes. Oregon and Brooklyn had 1, so a total of 8. Under capital, each municipality received 1 vote. And it passed on 4 of 5. So that's where you're getting your 80% from. But if I read through this current agreement, everything is 2/3, with anything that would happen to come up above a budget cycle requires 100% majority. If something needs to be taken care of with any budget cycle that was not recognized, I would probably say that, now this is not a negative, but probably the only time that I can think of in my longevity on this, serving this board, is when we heard that the life cycle of the airpack system was being exhausted. So we had to hustle up and get a new system in
to the capital for that. However, if you look at what was provided by the fire personnel, they had a capital expenditure all the way out to 2035 with equipment. Granted that we did okay the new apparatus ahead of schedule. However, it's a good thing based on how long it's being taken to be created and put in front of us. So I don't know where you are saying 80% within this.
Page 10. And 4.4 on the second paragraph. It states there shall be a joint meeting of the district board and municipality fire before October 15th. For final approval of the operating capital budget, the annual operating budget and capital expenditures will be deemed to have passed when it's been approved by an affirmative vote of 80% in accordance with the voting percentages described in section 4.1.
So how does that? If you have 45% of the voting power, what does that leave the smaller groups with any authority whatsoever to help make a decision on what needs to be done?
They'd have their voting share based on how much they're paying. So if
So,
you're looking at map here for a minute,
yeah, I'm looking at
if
that.
you're looking at equality here, if you're talking about a municipality that's paying 45% versus 2%, like the vote should be different.
I don't agree.
Okay,
That's fine.
well, that's where the village is at.
So it sounds like the village wants to control the budget.
The village wants an equal share versus what they are paying.
We want to have the equal representation based on our percentage in there.
Right, before it was,
Right.
we were taxed without any representation. Everybody could vote. All the younger, or not the younger, but the smaller groups could vote yes. And Belleville, who would pay most of the percentage of the cost, could vote no, and we went nowhere. Our vote didn't count. And that's not right. It has to be done more on an equalized.
So, but it's not right that the village has the total purse strings, who gets.
You get,
Pay the most, Debbie.
yeah, we
We
pay
pay
the
the
most.
most.
So
But
I
then what's
guess.
the point of having a district board, I guess is my question.
Well, I guess, answer this question, Deb. So they get, say Brooklyn got 2%, or Oregon got 2% of the vote. And they only pay 2%. We're paying 46, 47%. Now, what's fair about us getting one vote and they get one vote? That's not fair.
You get 2 votes.
But it was.
It doesn't matter. That's subject to.
She was just giving an example. It was just an example.
Yeah, it was just an example, and I mean, it's just not fair.
Don't you think we should all kind of cooperate and get along? I
I
mean, we're all
agree.
5 municipalities in this together, yes. The village
I
is
agree
5% and Brooklyn is 1%. But you're saying your life is worth more than our lives? I don't think that's what you're saying.
No.
So why don't we get together and cooperate and do what's best for all of our residents rather than just the village residents or just the Brooklyn residents?
Well, we've been trying to do that through
Yeah.
this committee and got nowhere.
Nowhere.
So
Absolutely nowhere.
Well,
It isn't like,
I'm the new guy here. I have a representative that's been representing Brooklyn forever and will continue to represent Brooklyn. You guys asked me to come here. That's my observation. You all need to get along and cooperate.
Sounds like the only way that's gonna happen is if the village gets what we want.
Well, at that point, it becomes a department of the village. The board, this board
Then
disbands.
they can take over everything. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it's like,
I mean,
do we wanna cover everything or do we wanna figure
You know,
this out?
A good analogy too, I mean, I understand, I think we'll understand, you know, you're paying more. Look at the Senate. Delaware gets the same amount of votes as California. Two.
look at the House of
I know.
Representatives. Wisconsin gets 8, California gets 72. So
In government.
you can argue that both ways, Ted.
No, it's not the same as that. It's not what you're describing because both houses exist in
Give
US
equal
government.
power.
And there's interaction there and the voting goes from one to the other. You cannot say, without this group having both types of houses, you can't make that argument.
So are we looking for like a line item veto? Veto just one thing, or we want to veto the whole thing? You said, I'm new to this, so that's why I'm
Like,
asking.
it doesn't matter how large the village possibly ever get. There's no way they could veto anything unilaterally. It takes 80% to veto.
80% of what you said.
80% of the total.
80% of the
80%
80%.
is capital, but it's 2/3.
No, 80% on everything.
Everything.
So if the village
It
wants
says
to
it on
veto
page
something, it would need
Um,
at least Exeter, Montrose, or whatever the breakup would be. It couldn't do anything unilaterally. So that's not it. Okay, it's not that we don't respect anybody's life or anything like that. It's hyperbole. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the administrative procedures and how it's run. We're not talking about people's lives. Obviously, everyone's life is important and we care about, you know, everyone in the district getting service. So that's not even what we're talking about. The reason that we want changes to the district is because there were so many things that were not well set out here, just from an administrative standpoint, like capital purchases, not even talking about voting, just how it's carried out. Okay, no problem with purchasing a fire truck. That's gonna happen. Hell, there's two more that they're gonna end up purchasing again and replacing. It's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. We all know that we're gonna need a new fire station at some point in the future. Like, these are knowns. So it's not the fact that we gotta do it, it's how it's carried out. And so the board votes when they vote to purchase what they're going to purchase. When do people pay? What percentage do they pay? Is it based on now or is it based from 4 years from now? You know, those kind of things are not spelled out at all in the agreement. Nothing. And so this agreement clarifies that. The voting, yes, it's equal representation with the amount of skin you have in the game. And so I have never in my life seen it where a community that has 1%, 2%, 10% of a district gets an equal voting share to anybody else. Usually those are just contracted out to those municipalities. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I think it's great that everybody gets input. I think it's great everybody has a seat at the table. I don't think it's great that somebody in Oregon or Brooklyn has the exact same voice as somebody who's in Belleville, and the person in Belleville is paying 46 times more than the person in Brooklyn is for the same service. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair if you flip it to Montrose or Exeter either. I don't think it's fair that somebody in Montrose and Exeter is paying 40 times what the person in Oregon or Brooklyn is paying for the same service and has the same vote as that municipality. So it's not just the village. It's everyone in the agreement. It's making it fair. It's not the village trying to enact anything that's going to purely benefit. You know, and we actually came in here before the last meeting talking about that we would pay more because there was some type of talk about, you know, it's not only equalized value of population, it's run volume. And so we worked out what that would be based on the average of the last 3 rolling years. And it was ended up being what, 15,000, 30,000 more a year. And we're like, okay, we will do that. We will add that in. For some people, I forget the exact numbers. For some of you, it was more. For some of you, it was less. For us, it was 15 to 30,000 more a year. And we're like, we'll do that. That's fine. That's fair. Not a problem with fair. We're just trying to make it fair. We're trying to update it to make sure that we're taking into account as many things as we can foresee and making it as fair to the population served as possible. It has nothing to do with the quality of service. We want obviously the best quality of service. It has nothing to do with the current people who are actually responding to calls. Nothing to do with them whatsoever. This is purely administrative. So that's my spiel on it. And that's the way I've seen it, and being in all the closed sessions on this side and reviewing the document after Gabe's drafted it and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's just my perspective. I'll shut up now.
So work through an example of the 60% that you're proposing. An 8 members on the board. We've come up to a budget item over $5,000.
So
Work through that. Tell us how that would work out, that if you got 60% of the vote, or 60% of the.
Up to 60%. We only have 45% of the vote right now.
Let's say we propose annexation and your stuff, you're gonna be there.
Let's say we do max out and it's 60%. It still takes 80%. So we would still need either one or the other of Exeter and Montrose to feel the same way that we do about it.
And that's basically it, because the two smaller municipalities, I don't believe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I don't believe they have enough added up to be able to sway one way or another if you take into account Montrose or Exeter. And so it would still take Montrose or Exeter to veto anything. The village would not be able to unilaterally do it.
Right. So
This gives an option for a veto.
the largest entity gets capped at 60% voting power.
Well, 60% of the majority.
That's something that was discussed, it was
But
not
not
the last
80%.
No, but in order to pass, you need 80%.
That's the
Is what's
budget.
written here.
For any financial matter.
Yeah.
80% is 4 out of 5 municipalities.
But we don't think of the municipalities as just one, you have to think of it,
That's how it's written in 2017.
yes.
Yes.
I know, but we're moving past that, and even though there's gonna be 2 representatives from Belleville, they vote as one. And so one of them would vote for the 60 whatever percent, or the 40% or whatever. So you can't think of the 2 people, you just have to think of Belleville as a whole gets 60 in this scenario. And he had said, what it also says is, maybe eventually we're paying 70%.
Right.
Like, even if we get above everybody else and we're paying 70, our cap is at 60. And then the rest of that 10% gets divvied out between everybody else based on their percentage. That's how it was worked out at the last meeting.
Right. I mean, it's possible if Belleville grows, we could be paying 70 or more percent of the budget, but still have our voting power capped at 60%. And then during those votes, the other municipalities, so amounting to 20% would be needed to vote the same way as Belleville in order for that to pass.
And if something doesn't pass, how it was cited as this group last time was, it just falls back to the last year's budget plus whatever was increased wages wise. So staff shouldn't be punished for not coming to an agreement. So whatever they were increased wages wise last year was what they would get this year.
Because that modified, that's exactly what like the IFFA or WPPA and those unions do, is if you fail to reach an agreement with management, then your contract for the next budget year automatically reverts to the previous year's contract with a small COLA increase. That's exactly how that works. So that's
And
what we use as a model.
the, to say this is just the Belleville's document at this point isn't fair because we did spend hours at the last meeting. And each group said, this is what we would like to present to our boards based on what was presented there. So this does have every municipality's voice in it
From the last meeting.
from the last.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to circle back around to Ted's question. But I would include an additional question responding to the EMS budget, which is by lives, versus fire district budget, which is by assessed value. My concern is by life is a set dollar amount. How is Belleville paying more than the rest of the group with respects to the EMS?
I don't understand.
Roughly $76 a life.
Who put a value on the line? I didn't see that in here.
No, it's the budget divided by the number of people. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, so fire is equalized. by-
EMS is
so that-
based on
Right.
the amount of people. So we're paying based on how many people we have, that district has to serve.
The budget is voted on and the amount of payment is per individual life. I have 34 lives in Brooklyn, so I pay on 34 lives. Don't have my numbers here, but Belleville has 2,900 lives. You pay on 2,900 lives, but the dollar amount per life is exactly the same. How are you getting shortchanged with respect?
But it's the same on the fire side too. You've got a certain
Keep
property.
them separate, please. EMS question first, and then we'll address the fire.
It's,
So I think we got here, yeah, that's 100% true. It's the budget divided by the population is what you pay. But when we get back to voting, it doesn't matter if you have 34 or 2,900,
Right.
it's the same vote. That's the problem. So you make decisions for the 2,900 people. But for the 2,900, people in the village of Belleville. And Village of Belleville makes the same decision for the 34 people.
I'll accept that, but I make it on the 34 life.
Yeah, nobody's questioning that. You vote according to, you know, the population you serve, right? That's exactly right, yeah.
So down to dollars and cents, how is Belleville being shortchanged in the EMS system?
I don't think anybody's saying
Nobody said
shortchange.
that.
Like, it all has to do with the voting. It doesn't have to do with the dollar amount.
We're getting the same service
For 2,900.
for 2,900 people as you. Ed brought up at one of our committee meetings that we should pay based on calls for service. I said, go for it.
And when we
We
added,
gladly do that.
and when we added calls for
But we
service,
should get our percentage, we should get better or when it comes to voting that budget, then we should be, if we're gonna pay based on our call volume, then we should be able to vote based on our call volume.
Okay,
So
but would that,
it's
would
pay,
that,
pay and vote for what you use.
Yeah, there was no problem. It wasn't even the village who took it out last meeting. I don't remember who it was, but somebody said that it wasn't
Right.
necessary.
We had a whole different calculation.
but people were picking up in the village, don't all live in the village, they might work in the village, so.
Oh, that-
how do we
yeah.
separate that?
What about then should we already charge more for a non-resident than we do a resident? You know, that happens already. So
You don't
somebody
work
from
in the village.
Montrose is in Belleville and gets sick,
You got the same argument anyway.
yeah. That's a moot point.
Like where most of the accidents happen. I'm guessing they happen out by the quick
Not in
trip,
the village.
and that's right outside of us. So maybe someday that would be inside, but right now it's not. And so
Thank you for your input. Now, with respects to the fire side of things, which is the value of real estate, we're talking $1 million farms, $5 million barns, $1 million homes, all that stuff. You also have a community, volunteers, residents that support the fire district, huge numbers, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The public has purchased most of that equipment sitting in that building next door. How has Belleville been shortchanged with respects to capital?
yeah, I don't think anybody's talking about short change.
No,
That's what I heard from you regarding the
No.
vote.
that's not what you heard.
That you misinterpreted what he heard.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what
I'm not talking about like a disparity in the amount of money that's paid. I'm talking about the disparity in the governance, set up the governance of the district itself, like how things are voted on. I'm not talking about the actual dollars to donuts of it. I'm just talking about, I don't know a better way to put it. I don't know a better way to put it right now. It's gonna draw a blank. I'm sorry. But
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
And the fire department has been pretty self-sustaining for 115 years
What do you mean by that?
versus EMS. So they're still strictly volunteers. Versus EMS, who now is paid staff. So you can't really put a price tag on what the fire department does, and what the EMS does, and say it's a, what did you call it, a short change? It's apples to donuts. It doesn't even compare.
They're both separate entities that are,
Absolutely.
you know, have their own budgets and budget cycles and where their revenue comes from. You know, a big portion of it comes from each municipality. And the fire department raises a lot more from donations and fundraisers and things than EMS does. That's what I see as, you know, living in the community. So they do things to help, you know, those type of things. I don't wanna, I know EMS does things too, and so I don't wanna like single anyone out, but those are things that can be done to help reduce, you know, the financial burden to all the municipalities. You know, it's across all of us, not just specific to Belleville. So, I mean, those to me seem that they're just a matter of how you get to the amount of money that needs to be levied.
Oh, I'm a new board member at Montrose, and so I don't know the full history, but I understand the argument of wanting more representation due to your financial burden. I understand that. But has there been an issue with the way the board is currently set up that brought about the desire to increase voting representation? Or is it more of a financial matter, for lack of a better term, where you're paying more, so you'd like a large vote?
I don't know, I'm not speaking for them, but from what I've seen, is that it really boiled down to the amount of growth in the budget, specifically the EMS budget over the years. So it is the amount paid that's kind of the beam and bottom. Like, it may not have been a problem when there's small increments, but when you go up, 800% in the budget over the course of 8-9 years, then, that starts to set off alarm bells and people get,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was partly the trigger was excessive, what's, percentage wise increases were, becoming unsustainable. So. Being able,
It's true, we're gonna be 50% of the budget, and if we don't have that, like, we're paying the majority of the budget and don't have it. We don't have any say over that. That's the concern as it sits now. We're gonna have.
But there has not been issues with how the board's been running currently. It's just looking in the future and.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the agreement is really just structured like board president versus board chair, just changing the kind of more updated language. A lot of that pretty much stayed the same. A lot of really what changed.
The governance of the board is not the issue. Except for those little things, meeting dates and what you call it, president or a chair, all those kind of. The issue,
The voting is.
it's the financial side of it. We're not we're not proposing to change the voting on, are we gonna? Whatever, there's not many things that come to the board that aren't financial, but if we're gonna decide to paint the walls in the EMS building green instead of whatever color they are now, that's a simple majority of the 8 voting members. It's all on the financial side is where everything is right now, so.
So I still like you to work through an example, 8 board members on this district board. Budget item comes up for $5,000. How do we do the 60%, 80%? I mean, how many of the 8 members got a
So
favor?
each board, you guys, Montrose and Exeter and Belleville, yes, have 2 members on the board, yes. But when it comes to voting on financial items, they would get 1 vote. Teresa would have a sheet that says Belleville,
can I add something?
yeah,
Your 1 vote is to represent your total percentage
yes.
based on, the financial burden. So just kind of like a corporation, publicly traded company, when they
You
vote,
vote your stocks.
you vote the number of
Sure.
shares you own, so, and it's a percentage.
So we gotta calculate a percent every time we have a.
No, there would be
No,
a
that's
sheet
done
that's
it
based on
the budget
year.
time.
So
Yeah.
an 8-man board, how many does it take to pass those?
No, it's not 8 then. On the financial issue, it's 1 vote per
You
municipality.
can't think of
So,
the bodies, the individual bodies, like, when you're thinking of a financial vote, like Gary and Shelley are 2 EMS reps. They're 1 person for that financial vote.
The problem, I don't think I've heard that explanation multiple times. That's not the problem. I think they understand each municipality would have a vote.
Yeah.
And then, I don't think that's the issue. It's the percentages. I
Well, then
keep
the
hearing the
percentage based
percentages
on
and I
what-
keep hearing the explanation of 1 municipality, 1 vote.
Well,
I
yeah,
did
so
that, I believe.
I don't think they do.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
Good
well,
time has come up tonight, so.
if it will help, I can give an example with the 4 of us sitting right here.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
If each municipality, I do understand what's being said here, by the way. With request, the math. Is that your ability to control what's taking place with respect to the budget and so on and so forth is based on your percentage. With that said, why does Belleville need two people? Why does Exeter need two people? And why does Montrose need two people? If everybody has only one vote by percentage.
Or financial issues only.
I guess you don't.
Well, right, I mean,
We talked about
you
one,
could- you
I
could-
recommended that.
yeah,
Recommended
One per municipality.
I mean, you could go down to one representative, I guess, you know, there's.
We could go one, we could go three, whatever. When it comes to financial, each municipality gets
The
one
reason I
vote.
asked that question is, does that make sense to the rest of the people in the room? We're talking about 8-member board, but we're talking about a percentage.
Yes.
I think part of the whole thing keeping it in was just trying to keep as much of the old contract in as possible.
If you're talking about for the budget conversations, the one person per organization is your simplest math. Make life easier. It does, like it's,
It does, but it doesn't make any difference because again, on financial issues, each municipality gets one vote, whether they got 10 people on the board or one person, they get one vote and they vote their percentage. So we're getting hung up on 8 versus 1 versus whatever, so.
We could do the Ken's example now, please.
I can try to do an ad hoc example here with the four of us, we represent 100%. And if we're all even, we'd each have 25%. And then
you would need all.
you would need everybody to get something to pass because you have to hit 80% total. So 25, 25, 25, we're only at 75. So in that, you know, if everyone had 25%, we'd have to have a unanimous vote. Now, if you adjust that for, you know, what is in here, say Gary has 60% now, because he's contributing more. And then Maxine might have 20, and I might have 10, and she might have 10. So if Gary votes one way, that's 60% now. We still have to hit 80 for it to pass. She could vote no, and the two of us could vote yes, and then it would pass. Because 10 and 10, you know, you hit 80. So, or she could vote yes and we could vote no, and it would still pass. But if two of us voted no, you wouldn't cross the threshold of 80% needed to pass, so the vote would fail. And then you go into the, you know, prior year's budget until a resolution is found.
Ideally,
So Belleville's current financial stake is, you said 45%?
yeah, it's
Correct.
45 for one,
So if
47 for
we,
the other.
so if we need 80% of the vote to pass, if all our townships want to pass a financial thing and Belleville does not, we would not be able to pass it. Because we would not hit 80%.
Correct.
Correct.
And then what you would do, if you're do the budget sooner, we can go back and forth, what was the hangup? Maybe it was a simple stapler, right? Can we fix that, come back to it? So that's when you give a lot of time, so you can have that dialogue, because I think that's really the key, is you need to be able to have that dialogue to be able to change it. If by the early December, you can't come up with that dialogue, then it just reverts back to the last year's budget plus the percentage of personnel and move on till next year. Because December's that time, is because we have to send tax bills out and you can't get to know. So that's why December is that day.
And has there been problems in the past for Belleville? As I go to those annual meetings, that they haven't been supportive, because let's face it, we all go back and we were promoting is salaries.
Yeah.
Then nothing else gets passed, and that is not gonna be sustainable for a long period of time.
And I think that's why collaboration needs to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and
No
then
one's
we're gonna dig ourselves into a hole where, to get out of that hole, we're all going to have to.
And guess what? They have to pay even more.
Yeah,
So,
but,
the whole-
I
So
mean,
that's not, they're not gonna want.
that's not right for anybody. I mean, and it's certainly not right for the coverage of the residents that we all represent.
Agreed.
So we're not gonna wanna do that on a prolonged period of time, maybe 1 year, but
I would,
I wouldn't even do it a year, because you just now put yourself even further behind.
Okay.
The scenario, Mr. Chair, that you came up with because Gary has the majority of the vote. Whatever he says goes. He says no, the three of you can't even vote. If he says yes, then he might need 20% more, either from Maxine or from the two of you, 10%. But if he says no, and I'm just using your scenario, not Gary personally, but if that person says no, the other three of you guys don't matter. You're not going anywhere because you have 20, 10, 40%. Versus if it was the majority, there's 3 to 1. You can figure out why that one is upset about why they're not in favor of it and try to work through that if you can. But if you have 5, then you would have to have majority 4 to 5, or 80% would be 4 to 5.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Kathy, but the problem is that hasn't happened. When the one hasn't, there's been no discussion. It just passes and that's it. That's all.
Right.
Well, that goes back to where I say we have to kind of cooperate and get along.
Well, we've been
Figure
trying.
out why
We've been trying for a year and a half to do that and gotten nowhere, to be very honest, so.
so this is the scenario to come up with.
Right.
I agree.
Which,
Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, I just keep thinking, what does Belleville do if it doesn't have the money to pay for something that gets voted in?
If we're paying 55%, let's just say we're paying 55 and we have no say over that, because right now we wouldn't. If the village says no and you all say yes, and yet we're paying 55% of it and we can't afford it, but y'all can because you're paying 1% of it. How's that fair?
It's not even about fair, it's about literally, where do they get the funds for it then?
Exactly.
You'd end up without it,
Like,
I mean.
or a bigger hole.
And I can only say that, I mean, I've only been in the Belleville arena for a little over a year now, but I know there are budgeting issues and concerns and challenges. Yeah,
Well,
so,
and I'll go back because Ted has mentioned that Debbie or I made certain motions at meetings, which I couldn't find in the minutes, but, but I'm not gonna go there, but Ed wonders why the village has had a financial director and an assistant clerk and all that kind of stuff. That's an individual decision for the village, not for, we're looking at decisions that affect the entire district. So that, what the village does, we're probably not gonna cut a person here because our EMS budget has gone up 50% from the last year. We have to mind our P's and Q's for the village and provide the services that we need to provide also.
Judy, you had a comment?
Yes, I do. I do have a comment. What all the Exeter, Montrose, and Belleville are growing. And I would assume Brooklyn and Oregon will also start to grow because people are going further out in the country. So each year, the percentages will change, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, say the high price of living in Belleville, people start moving out to Exeter and Montrose and the other small communities around, then Belleville could end up with a smaller amount than the others. So instead of dealing with the percentages, you set up budgets you can afford to pay by everyone, no matter if you're big, small, or whatever.
I don't think our problem is paying more. Like, if we like the service that we're getting, so the service that we're getting is not the problem. The people who are doing the work is not the problem.
I didn't
It's just
say,
how much we're paying. That's why if we have to pay more because of our calls for service are more, and that's why, like, our board did not care about that. They just want, if we're gonna have to pay 60% of something, so we want to be able to have say in that.
So
That
this,
is it.
but it's what's in the
this
budget.
change basically is changing the way this document describes. Basically, it's changing it to pay for what you use. With both services, EMS and fire. And what you use is based on, equalized value in, number of people. So that's how you pay for what you use. And as if people move out of Belleville and into Exeter or wherever, those percentages do shift because your use changes based on the way we calculate use. Ashley, you had something?
Yes, it happens very often that Belleville say we get that majority or that 45%, and we have actually said no to a lot of things. And if so, has it been something that we've been able to meet back at the table and even out? It seems that people just feel like they're going to be completely pushed away, like if we can't get something. But it seems like we're always pretty good at the table to purchase what we need to purchase. Maybe it came out wrong, but
Yeah.
okay.
At the village board level, yes, that's the way it works. I'm not saying it hasn't worked that way in the past, but this all started a couple of years ago. We hired a full-time EMS director where you have full-time staff. We have a ton of LTE staff. Took a huge jump in the budget. And yeah, so the percent or the how do I want to put this? What's my train of thought here now? So there's been no negotiation at the village, and you attend enough village board meetings, you know how it works. We talk about things if we're over the limit, because we are set by a limit, a levy limit, so we know what we have to be at. There is no such limit at the district board. They're not bound by state statute that says you can only raise your budget by net new construction. We have that at the village board level, so there is not that. So I would say, and I've been on this board a long time, and in my previous position, when I was the director, there's no negotiation necessarily. So, the chiefs come in and present a budget, and I don't remember the last time we cut something out of a budget. So the answer to your question is really no, in my opinion. So.
Right there. And that mechanism is there to force a discussion on a particular budget item maybe. And that's, so we all understand at budget time, how and why, you want to spend, some large amount of money that we have questions about, or anybody does. When I say we, I mean everyone involved. So.
By meeting 5 times a year as a district board currently, it's never been the intent of the year that I've been on to micromanage either the fire and EMS. I mean, we don't know on a day-to-day basis. The inner workings, we rely on the chief to present his reports, tell us their needs, truck needs or staffing needs or whatever. And for the most part, in this case, they're both citizens and residents of this district. They tell us what they need. I don't think they've ever gone overboard. Just a comment on her point, both Exeter and Montrose, I believe, are basically on a zero growth pattern since we have land use plan.
Oregon too.
And I'm sure Brian, Oregon too. So the only municipalities growing in the future is gonna be the village, through annexation of land from both Exeter and Montrose. But we're on a zero growth pattern in the future. So our share is gonna keep dwindling over time. Because we're not adding any, we added 3 houses last year.
And then I guess,
Homes.
let's talk about that for a second. You're dwindling, we're going up, but our voting shares don't stay. We're gonna pay 51% of a new ambulance, and yet you all have lower share and can make that decision for the person that's paying the majority, and they can't stop it. Is that fair?
Right.
Because that's right now the trajectory that we're headed under this agreement.
So, but then the question is, do you want to make it a department of your village?
I don't want to oversee two more
I mean,
people.
that's coming to that point either.
No. I don't want to oversee 2 more people. I think this board, all they just want to do is be able to have that conversation with the shared, like the voting shares based on payment, and then we can have those conversations. Like I think it's not that they want to take over.
Yeah,
We've never had that one come.
I don't see anywhere in this conversation, in this document or in the 3 or 4 or 5 committee meeting, little subcommittee meetings we had that micromanage is anywhere listed in here. And I've made that very clear at every one of those committee meetings. We do not, our issues, and I'll make it clear again tonight, our issues are not with how the departments are run individually or the services they provide. It's strictly the financial. We don't want to micromanage. He said, we don't want to take it over. He doesn't want 2 more people he wants to supervise. We don't want that problem either. So. And to a point.
Can I make a comment?
There's a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting you guys are having with the EMS chief. You know, so aren't you kind of micromanaging there? So.
Somebody wants me.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, who is this?
This is Chris Backus, the EMS chief.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Good. I have a question for Gary. It was over questioning, having open dialogue with the budget. So last year was my very first budget. I know Gary had several questions for me, which I then answered for him. And then the village decided to vote down the budget without offering any kind of amendments to the budget. So I'm just kind of wondering, there was that space and that time for open dialogue, but it never happened.
Well, I would really be interested to see what would have happened if I would have offered an amendment, because it's never happened before. 2 years ago, we got cut off when we were trying to make an amendment that we were out of order. So that's probably why no amendments were offered, because we haven't had much luck with those in the past, even getting them to the table to be voted on. So,
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, part of what's in this document is when you have to have budgets submitted by and deadlines for those. Because, you know, the timing of when you get the budget and can review it, and then you go, there's not a whole lot of time to understand why something's in the budget and come up with a solution when you're at the meeting that you have to vote on the budget. So that makes it really difficult. You gotta have a little bit of longer process in order to work through those things.
Sure, budgets are due in the beginning of August, correct?
What was that?
August 1st, when the budget was due, August 1st.
Or in this agreement?
Is that October 1st?
Our annual meeting is October.
Now that's, well,
Oh.
so.
I think in August.
Because I believe I submitted the budget for last year 6 to 8 weeks prior to the budget night.
Well,
So on page 10, it says, the fire and EMS chiefs shall submit their annual recommended operating capital budgets by September 1st. The board shall review and recommend for approval of the fire protection budget and emergency medical services budgets by September 30th. So the district board has a month to play around with it. There shall be a joint meeting of the district board and municipalities by or before October 15th for final approval. And so you have October 15th by that first time to December to be able, if there's not agreement, to come up with agreement. That's a month and a half. If you can't come up with it, it's because we lack of trying. Like, that's a ton of time to be able to come up with, there is any disparity between.
Correct, right, that's what I'm saying. So that budget was provided with.
That's in this contract, not in the current contract,
So-
in the revised.
just to give a little history, Chris, we have had the chiefs, whether it be you or your predecessors, and the fire chief, we've asked them to come to village board meetings to discuss the budget in more detail, because when, in the old days, when we used to have a meal and then try to sit down and discuss the budget, that's a lot to do in one night. We've been chastised by other district board members for how dare we ask one of the chiefs to come to a village board meeting to discuss something. We're well within our rights to do that, but every time it gets brought up, we get chastised for doing it, so.
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
Can I just, as a total newcomer to this and someone who's not really involved in this, I do want to point out I'm hearing a lot of past grievances here. And one thing I want to remember, or want everyone to remember, is you're looking at a system here to exist between Belleville and Montrose and Exeter and Brooklyn and Oregon, all these different governmental distinctions. And the conflicts y'all are talking about are between individuals. That's two different things to consider there. That's all I want to say.
Was smart. You said a good thing. Thank you.
He's a good boy.
Thank you.
So,
Here's a, maybe a tangent, but not so much of a tangent, is one of the things that, that catches my eye on this is that there's a 10-year term to this agreement. And there's enough, it seems like there's enough uncertainty about how it'll play out that dialing that back to say a 3-year term with maybe annual reviews of how it's working for each of the municipalities might not be the worst idea in the world.
You could do, well, yeah, you could do, well, I mean, just to keep it so you don't, if it works out swimmingly, you can have it like automatic re-up every year unless there's, you know, some kind of written communication or something.
Yeah, whatever the timing is. I mean, I'm not
So
married.
that way it doesn't automatically cancel, it just keeps going in case.
Right, unless there's an amendment to it.
Yeah, I mean, cause I agree 100% with you, but I mean, this has taken
Oh, I know.
2 years now, so I mean, I think we need to have, yeah, it's an automatic renewal unless in municipality, you know, whatever the wording is in there, but,
Right.
yeah, 10 years might be too long. I could simply live with reducing the time on that.
Part of this, like, part of being of having it, honestly, because with part of that conversation, I think part of the reason having to go out that long is just to reassure people that we didn't want out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest part of having it go 10 years. Hell, I think some people want to go 20 years. Yeah, that was the big thing. It's like, well, that's not the wanted outcome.
And really, that only makes sense. It's the big if. So if there's almost agreement, you know, I don't know that we're gonna get to 100% agreement. But if we're close, then that might be something that relieves some pressure of saying, hey, we're signing on for 10 years.
I think that's totally fine.
This,
It's okay, but you know, it's the document that needs to be reviewed.
It's a living, breathing thing. If something's not
Regularly.
working, we need to come back, to be able to come back to the table and change it.
but that should be built into the document.
100%.
Right. Yep. So if it's okay to sort of switch subjects a little, Ted, you brought up the part about audits. It's my opinion that audits should be conducted regularly according to generally accepted accounting principles. So whether that's yearly or biannually, either one, I don't know what the actual term is supposed to be, so whatever would fit that would be what I want in this document. And anything of a, you know, you go back to this document and that's what stands regardless of, you know, whoever's representing whichever municipality, and maybe they misspoke or didn't know. Would be my thing, you know, at a meeting.
Can I give a little bit?
Yeah.
It's important to me that I get.
I'll let Ian go first.
Okay, so the, not talking about any past audits or anything, the reason that audit's important for us,
I was gonna do that.
huh?
That's okay.
Then I'm really glad I'm doing it first.
You want the tie?
No, I don't ever want to wear one of those. So the reason it's important, I don't know you guys' financial situation. I don't need to know you guys' financial situation, but if you're a public entity that issues bonds, you are required by law to have an audit annually. Required. The district obviously doesn't. We're different municipalities that just agree to do it together. It's not issuing bonds on its own. You probably could, but that's a whole other thing. So we have to get it annually. Every single year we get dinged because there's not a completed audit. And we did have a completed audit, or partially completed audit this year, for fire district for our auditors. But the capital portion of it wasn't completed, so we still got dinged for it. We are not,
Qualified.
not qualified.
Yeah.
We're definitely qualified.
Unqualified.
Well, yeah, unqualified is what they call it, but we're not rated right now by a rating agency. So we can go to Moody's or anything like that to get an AA, AAA rating. So we didn't do that. If we ever did want to do that, we would be able to get better rates on debt for our citizens. We're working towards that, and we're really close to being in a really good spot to be able to do it. But for a couple of dings in our annual audit, and the fire district audit being one of them. Another one was fund balance for us, but we worked on that. We're good now. Another one is a couple of different policies we need to get nailed down, but that's little stuff on our end. So that's why it's important from my perspective anyway, that we get it done, is because if we have that audit done to an acceptable timeline, and we have that information we can provide to our auditors could check that box. And then when we do go to issue new debt, we can get, if it makes sense to pay the money to get rated, we can get a much lower interest rate on our debt going out 24 years for our citizens. So that's why the audit's important. I mean, besides any of the other, somebody who might have taken money at some point, whatever, obvious fraud stuff, that's the operationally why it's important to me in my position.
Right. So that's why audits are, and it sounds like it'd be your annual.
Agreement.
So,
We'll add, like, this year probably sucked because they hadn't had it for a while and it's a lot of work. You're doing it regularly, you do get in that pattern of those spreadsheets ready, so it will be easier. And I'm sure both chiefs could probably agree that it probably sucked like that. It's a lot of work when you don't do it regularly, because you gotta get all that data and remember everything, and it's just, they're supposed to be a pain.
I mean, the more time they have to spend on site and in documents, the more money it costs you too. So that's the big one.
Yeah, I guess our point was, like, where are we sitting? Like, obviously, we're not dissolving this and starting the new one tonight. But like, what gets us to that next step to be able to make a decision on this? Like, what changes need to be made to be able to
yeah.
go to that next step? Whether that's another meeting here with the reviews changes, or if we feel like if everything's included, we can just go to different municipalities and make the recommendations. Like, what do you guys need to do? What do you guys need to have in here to make yourselves comfortable to be able to move the next step?
I don't know how the other townships feel, but from the discussion, it sounds like one of the main concerns is Belleville having basically a veto with the weighted voting system.
And
If it,
with the weighted voting system, to my knowledge, Montrose and Exeter would both be over that 20% threshold, and they would have veto power on their own right.
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
all three of them, all three of the big ones.
So that's even a bigger problem, is it not just one municipality can bottleneck what I've already heard could be contentious in the past with the financial budgets. Now, three different municipalities can put a stranglehold on it. I don't see how that makes any of the budgeting process any easier.
And I guess from the staff level, that's really where your chiefs need to shine. If your chiefs can't be the ones that can advocate for themselves, like, that's really where the pressure comes onto them, is they need to be able to tell you and sell you and explain that to you.
Have they been able to thus far with the current agreement?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not,
no, right now, so what you're saying is nobody should have any veto power, so
Not one.
Brian or Chris can submit any budget they want. Cause like I said, I don't remember, and I did a lot of budgets from the EMS side, I don't remember things ever get cut out of there, so, so why do we even vote on it? Because we're never gonna turn a budget down.
Why should Montrose have the ability to hold, we would be able to strangle that budget just as well as he could at that point.
Right.
Why is that beneficial?
Well, like I said, then why do we, if none of us have the authority to stop a budget from happening, why do we even have a budget hearing?
Yeah, EMS could be like, well, we need 2 new ambulances.
You guys haven't done a budget yet on the town board, but you will, you gotta, again, because all the municipalities are bound by levy limits. You're gonna have to make some tough decisions. It's like we do. District board, because there are no levy limits and based on what you said, there's nothing to stop Chris or Brian, and I'm not saying either one of them would, but puts in a 500% increase in their budget because nobody can stop it. And like I said,
Two people.
there's not been many line items that have been cut out of the budget in the 30+ years I've been involved on the fire and EMS side, on the EMS side especially, that we've cut any line items out of a budget.
That's the point, is they should be able to stop it. To force the discussion of why they're stopping it and to work towards
Well, and
a resolution.
stability as well. So we don't want Brian and Chris, our fire and EMS chiefs, to just start spending.
So, Ian, what did you have to say?
Okay, so you guys are having the good political fight, and that's cool. But what it boils down to is exactly what Ted was saying earlier, and what we were trying to allude to with living and everything. You guys have zero growth factor. You're not going to be able to tax it. You're not. Like being able to figure out where to cut, just so you can give employees, if you have employees, like just the cost of living increases is gonna be hard enough. We just came off a year like that. We were able to increase 1.4% based on our net new construction. When everything with inflation and healthcare, everything's gone up 11% and more. So when we have a EMS budget that comes in for our percentage increase is 35%, okay, now we gotta lay off somebody. All right, now we gotta do this, now we gotta do that. That is what we're talking about. I don't care who voted no to take out what from when, doesn't matter. I'm talking about moving forward. Like, we need to figure out a way to effectively combat that, or there is no future for this venture. Like, there just isn't. It's not sustainable. Like, we literally cannot afford to provide the basic services that we have and have a 50% increase or 45% increase in a budget line that's $100,000. We just can't do that. Our entire allowable increase last year and then some went into our EMS portion of our budget. And then we had to figure out other places to cut to be able to give people just basic 3% increase in salary. And we can get creative with different things, but I mean, when you're talking budget wide impact, I don't know how you guys' budget is, but like, there's only so far you can get creative to find 50 or $100,000. I mean, it's just, it's an impossibility. And so we need to figure out some way to even out the checks and balances. Hell, there's 5 of you. Why don't you all pay 20%? That works for me. We can do that. I don't think anybody wants that, but we can do that. Like, that's what we just need to figure out a way for it to work. Everybody in this room wants it to work, or we all wouldn't be in this room. Like we haven't told them to not make it work. We're trying to give different options to everybody. And I like, say what you will for hired staff, whatever, if you don't live in the community, I get it. I totally get it. But like, it doesn't, we're trying to come with all the ideas, all of our experience to try to put options in front of you guys to make it work. And you gotta stop shooting things down because of what could happen or what happened 20 years ago and try to find a way to move forward to combat the issue that we're having, which is just a drastic increase. And I'm not saying it's not warranted, Chris, I know you're listening to me and you're mad at me. I'm not saying it's not warranted. Maybe you really do need the money, but we need to figure out some way for there to be a better check and balance on it, better system for it than what we currently have, because let's see how much the EMS budget is going to increase this year. And then we budget our entire municipality surrounding that. It just don't work. Like, we came real close to having to lose staff this past year just to make it work. We can't keep doing that when the rest of our departments are unable to increase their budget 1%. But we have one department that we have no control over, that raises 35%. That just, it's not sustainable. It just isn't.
So you guys haven't, or you don't want to just take over the fire EMS and contract services with the rest of us? And
That's something that
come
could
under
be.
your umbrella?
I've worked
It's
in
not something you want to do?
So I worked at the town of Beloit, and we were a town that had a full service, 2 stations, full-time fire department. And we did contract with several other communities in Greene and Rock County, and that worked out well. That worked out fine. They combined the town of Turtle, and then it was a combined town of Beloit, town of Turtle Fire Department, and then you started to have interaction between the boards, and that worked out fine. So I've seen it from that angle. I worked in the North Shore Fire District, north of Milwaukee. That's where I started. And so you got, Village of Shorewood, Whitefish Bay, all these places on the Gold Coast, north of Milwaukee. And that worked perfectly. They tried the same thing on the South Shore and it failed miserably. So it depends on the community. It depends on what the larger community has to offer and what they can kind of deal with politically, I think.
It isn't something that Belleville's strong.
We don't have any capacity to do it right now.
Let's talk, I guess, in the political one, we really haven't talked about it on. But I guarantee you if one of them had said, would that be willing, they would get attacked for that, because we've already been,
Well,
I think,
it sounds like you guys are growing so doggone fast and your projections are gonna be so much more than the four of us.
1,500 units in the next
Yeah.
10 years, yeah.
So you're almost going to have to be moving or even thinking in that direction and then contract services out. Brooklyn's not growing at that speed
Yeah.
and we'll never compete, so
It's true.
should we be part of a district or should we have contract services?
And I think if that's a conversation that you guys want to have, let's have that conversation. But I just think for their point, and I don't want to speak for them, but they want the district to stay a district. But if that's not what this group wants and consensus wise, then yeah, we need to have that conversation. But that has not been the conversation on this end.
I have no idea what that would look like. Just on the cuff, like taking it in as village departments, we don't have the capacity.
It would mean
We're
all
running
of
around
our,
like chickens are head cut off right now, how busy.
it would mean that our park projects, our public works projects, our facilities projects, all go at the table.
Just based on what I'm hearing today and how much you guys, the village is growing versus the four other municipalities. Going in that direction. Sure sounds that way.
But
Maybe not today.
no, but the politicalness, I don't think we could come to that agreement. So it's just now how do we make something work?
So to finish the point I was making before it got hijacked. To reiterate, so what the concern I'm hearing is that in the future, as Belleville grows and we don't, is that we will not even combined. If an issue comes up, we will have no say in the financial decisions if Belleville does not want to do it. Maybe a provision that can be added is at a certain point, if our townships combine, 4 versus 1, the veto power goes away. I think that's one of the main concerns where once Belleville gets to a certain size, we essentially have no say in, it'd be almost a contract situation.
Montrose or Exeter will always have a say.
But together, even if we decide to all vote one way and Belleville has a different opinion, not saying that will ever come, but you never know. That's one of the main concerns I'm hearing from the townships is that as Belleville grows and we basically lose our voice.
Well, it's really already come to that decision, because the village has voted no on the budget last year and the year before, and that was it.
So one thing that was helpful maybe last time was breaking out into the communities and talking amongst yourselves for a minute. Would that be helpful now? I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do, but I think it was last time, it was like everybody was able to kind of make sure that they were all on the same page as municipality. You guys don't want to do that, but I just want to open that up.
Can I just add something? The last few chiefs before Chris did not do very good budgets. We did not have paid staff. So part of this going up was we hired Chris, we hired an assistant chief. We were not sustainable without paid staff. We would not have had an ambulance service in this area.
When did you start going to paid?
Yeah, you've had LTE staff for a while.
Just LTEs. no,
Yeah, well, that's paid staff,
paid
Debbie.
staff.
You're getting a salary. You're not getting a salary. You're getting a per hour or per call.
No, we don't get per call.
Well, you used to.
Yeah, we used
You
to.
changed from the per call to paid LTE staff,
Paid on staff, paid on site, yeah.
paid on call staff.
Yeah, they're paid on site, yeah. But we also had to, we used to put money aside every year, as you know, for our truck fund. That's now gone because it's now what capital expenditure, or whatever, we switched. So we've made some changes to the budget. I don't think, personally, I don't think the EMS budget's gonna go up like that every year. I mean,
That's 90.
right now, we're playing catch up. We should level off. Chris, am I wrong?
You are correct, Debbie.
What did you say, Chris?
I said Debbie is correct.
That we should
Currently, we're
level off?
forecasted about a 5% increase.
Way behind,
Well,
but it's
Still
There
adds.
was, cause it was the meeting we had, the closed sessions, and as we came out of that, there was already discussion going on about raising the LTE hourly rate and there's already talk about raising rates for this year's budget, so, yeah, I guess I'll believe on either side, fire, EMS, wherever, you know, the proof is in the pudding when the budget comes out, that there's not gonna be large increases in salaries, because
The history's in the numbers and there's
Yeah.
nothing to make me think it wouldn't continue until it actually changes.
and that, nobody can hide your words.
The financial.
We're playing it,
EMS.
the Village of Belleville is playing the game with the Glarus on the law enforcement side. Every time we hire an officer,
They go over there.
he goes and raises the salary. So that game's played all over. It's played in EMS. I see it still. I'm still, really involved in EMS. So on the other side, not on the call side, but it's happening all over. So,
But keep in
okay.
mind,
So
you said that you feel like we're picking on EMS. We're not picking on.
No.
That's what it feels like. It seems to be
Because-
EMS and
No,
not much
because
fire.
fire is structured differently. They're purely volunteer. We don't have any paid staff. They do their fundraising.
And we're fundraising too. We've picked the pace up.
Where your budget is $200,000 more than the fire department. That's where there's.
either way, they're budget numbers that come in front of these boards and need to get voted on. In the process of, however you get to that number, great. We need to figure out how we're gonna move forward with this if we're going to. So are there any particular items in this that anyone would like to see changed, reworded, that would help move us towards, you know, a future meeting where we could possibly get towards a vote on this? Go ahead.
Mr. President. Under page 5, officers. It appears that this pretty much was taken out of our old agreement. However, we have also updated and changed due to necessities with the election of chairman, vice president, or they were president, vice president. Do I interpret this language indicating that the secretary and treasurer are going to come from those board members?
No,
I think it's whoever's elected.
the intent of the writing is that, the officers are, like, those are the positions of the board, but they do not have, as secretary and treasurer do not have to be members of the board. You can appoint, there's still an officer of the.
So that's the intent, but the language is not there, is that correct?
Oh. It's there. Prescribed by the, like, for example, the secretary shall keep a complete record of the transactions and proceedings of the district and shall have other responsibilities
So,
prescribed by the board.
Those are the responsibilities.
Yeah.
it's not duly written, so I guess my recommendation would be remove the positions that it rotates and just say that the positions of chair and vice chair shall be members that are on the board, and the secretary and treasurer can be appointed by the board.
Which is the way it is.
Prescribed, yeah. It's just differently.
I don't read it that way.
The reason I asked the question,
Right there.
No, it's about,
you
yeah,
know, the reason that I asked this question is not by my position. It's by our current secretary. She interpreted this saying that she would not get any compensation for her time presented. Because up above, all compensation is going to be removed. So likewise, if I hear you correctly, this would be true to the treasurer also. Our treasurer is also hired.
That's where I said, the amendment that I stated, that it would be that the chairperson and vice chairman would be board members. The, secretary and treasurer
What my request is to put some language in there indicating that
Yeah, we need to
the
clean.
secretary and the treasurer could be a board member, however, that is not how we do business today. Thank you.
So I guess that would be could be an ethical problem if one of you was, or one of us, somebody on the board was the secretary and then was voting on their salary as a board member.
Thank you.
So that would
So,
be,
so in other words, those two positions have to be appointed,
they would be,
however, but they cannot be staffed by a board member.
or they could be, you just take pay away during the time that they did it.
So they wouldn't be a voting board?
No, like you could do it that the secretary was a voting board member if you took pay away. If you didn't want to do that, then yeah, you would probably just say a voting board member wouldn't be a secretary. If pay was the most important part of the secretary position, if you wanted pay, they shouldn't be.
I follow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we could put language in there that said, if it's a board member, there's no pay associated with the position. If it's an appointed non-board member, then there could be pay, or they could be compensated. Like it is now.
Actually,
I think that's a valid change.
this question came from an outside source.
No.
I want to clarify.
It's a valid, very good question. Is that something that you all would like to see changed? I'm like just gonna be pushing ahead if y'all want.
Yeah.
So
Is that unanimous by? No one objects, so
That's fine. That's-
just trying to make editing this efficient for Gabe.
my goal, and I think the village board's goal, is just after tonight's meeting, we know what needs to take place, what changes need to come in, or what conversations have to be had to be able to come to agreement. So that's where I'm gonna be asking if you guys are good with it, so that way if I change it, when we come back, we don't have to talk about
If we settle in on the shorter term.
Mhm.
I mean, it's cool with me, but I'm not doing.
it. I have no issue with
I
it.
have no problem with it.
Is,
What's that? Shorter.
was there a section in here on, how to modify this agreement if needed?
I didn't really.
How to amend it.
You could put it down by term, say, 3-year term with an annual review. And if there's no changes, then roll over.
Just says. And then he said,
Yes, amendment of the agreement shall require a majority vote of all board members.
and unanimous approval by each municipality.
Yeah, there is a section in there,
It's very last, 10.3.
page 15.
Where are we at in the length of term?
5 years and renew it, or?
3 years fine with an automatic renewal, and then what I've seen when I did Deer Grove was the municipality had a year. They had to write a notice January 1st, hey, we need to have this conversation. That way the other municipalities.
Especially anyway you want.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, but I would give yourselves a time that the municipality has to put in writing, hey, it is our intent to either leave, or it's our intent to, we need to negotiate. That gives you guys time to be able to have your conversations. That way it's not just, hey, January, we're leaving, sorry, we're done, or, November. You gotta have, that'll be my advice, would have a time frame that they have to notice to have that conversation.
I think we're talking two different things
I
there.
think so.
No,
I think you're talking,
I'm talking about term, length of term, but then to exit, you need to have that conversation too.
yeah, those
And I
are two
think-
separate
Yeah,
things. So let's just focus on length of term of this document right now.
I think we could,
And it's auto renewal unless somebody wants to discuss it, change something in it.
with 9 months notice or 6 months notice.
Yeah.
there you
The
go.
length of term, what do you want?
3
3
years.
years.
3 years.
Since
Automatic renewal every year after 3 years? What time frame do you wanna have to give notice to either intend to terminate the contract or intend to renegotiate the contract?
6 months, 9 months.
9 months, I mean, honestly,
9
like,
months.
in the room, the two municipalities that have the biggest hardship if this were to terminate would be Exeter, Belleville. Because Montrose, Oregon, and Brooklyn could be serviced fairly easily by other departments. Whereas our call time go to shit, so.
So what's, I guess,
I think,
where are you going? Just
Like,
because
the
of
budget,
budget, I
that
think,
is, it would take an awful, it would
Take a
be a
long-
burden
yeah.
on Exeter and Belleville if this were to break up, whereas for the other communities, it may not. You know,
Well,
like,
you're-
so a long enough lead time to be able to figure something
That's
out.
what I think a year.
at least 9 months, because we're already started our budget and it's, you know, in March, so at least 9 months, if not a year, so, yeah.
Did I miss it? Were we in agreement on
3 years.
3 years and automatic renewal yearly
Yeah.
for that? Of this contract? Okay,
Yeah, nods.
all right.
I don't, bro, yes, I get nods.
And what was the station again?
What was termination?
9 months?
Well, I think that's,
9 months before January 1st, 9 months from the signing
Well,
of this contract?
I like specificity.
I do like that. So I guess my recommendation would be the new contract probably. You want the new contract to go in place January 1st, because then if you do that, January 1st to December 31st, you could do the 9 months pretty easily. But if you don't, and it operates like October, like, I don't know.
The budget
Yeah,
cycle.
you made reference to January 1st in here, so that's what I.
Yeah, no, I think January 1st.
A calendar year is simpler, if we can just do it, yeah.
Well, I, to Ian's point, it should correspond with the budget cycle.
Yeah. And we're all on a calendar year budget cycle, so.
So January 1st.
Except for that.
Yeah, notice must be done by January 1st of the prior, or the following year of either termination or discussions. Like you would say you have, if you're gonna, let's just say you're wanting to leave in 2027, you would need to give notice before January 1st of 2026. So December 31st, 2025 is when you'd have to give notice to be leaving in January 27th.
What's the previous, not the following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So, but again,
You'd get a whole year.
we're kind of talking two different, I agree with Mike, we're talking termination of the contract. I think the point was made before about updating or renegotiating this contract.
I know, you give the same language, you give a year of
Okay.
notice
For
to
both.
either, I'm giving notice to terminate, or I'm
Okay.
giving notice to
Okay,
come back to
all
the.
right,
What notice is up to whoever's notice,
Yeah. notice for what, yeah, okay.
does that make sense, like, December, all that next year, and then the start of that following year is what you would actually.
Okay, so 12 months notice to change this contract or to terminate. Withdraw, whatever, or withdrawal, which the withdrawal was already in here, I know, so.
You got language about any board member requesting legal counsel, they're entitled to 2 hours. Is that?
Can you?
Which,
Okay. It would be on page 7, L.
In the motion of the first of all, to forwarding, you should have.
Any board member can request legal counsel at their expense for 2 hours.
So I think that's, we have a rule in our village, that sense is like. Anytime that a board member contacts engineers, we're getting billed for that. And my board cannot act, like the village and all your boards cannot act, you as a single individual do not have more authority than the other individuals. So you can't, let's just say Maxine cannot direct the village attorney to go do something. She can ask a question, she can say, you gave a recommendation and you recommended us doing this. Why did you make that recommendation? But then she can't say, you need to do this. Like, she doesn't have that authority. And that's what this is writing is you guys as the district board members should be able to talk to an attorney and say, well, why is this going on? But if you're gonna start accruing a lot of hours that are billable hours, maybe the district board isn't in agreement. Like, the district board should be having the one to say, are we using the attorneys or engineers or anything like that. That's why it's written that way.
So this, if I read it right, any board member can basically have two own legal counsel without other, the whole board approval.
With it being relatable to the firing man.
Okay, yeah.
But that's why it's in there, it's just, you know, if you're gonna be causing expenses to the district, like, there needs to be a cutoff to that. That's where they can't just tell one, the engineer, I don't like that park plan, redesign it. You know. Whatever. Working.
So I got another question.
That's it.
More general question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the village and, God bless you, so we've kind of taken the lead on requesting some changes. Isn't it up to the district board to make these changes and bring it back? I mean, how we, cart before the horse here.
No, I think that's why we discussed a lot last time, is it's taking a long time, and what honestly, why the municipalities are in here is y'all are the ones that make the final decision. If you guys aren't gonna go along with something, we're not wasting time at the district level if it's just gonna come here and fail. That's why it's much better to have this conversation with the districts, all the municipalities, because then you actually, if you guys don't really hate something, but the district board likes it, and then we come back to you and you're like, nope, then we have to redo the whole process. Whereas I would rather just know what you're gonna approve or not approve and then be able to work from there. And honestly, the district board works for you. So it doesn't really matter what they think. If you guys don't like something, then you tell the district board what to do. The same with the committees. The committees, village committees do not have autonomous power here. They work on behalf of the village board. The village board says we're putting a park in. The committee doesn't say, well, we don't really want a park there. They're putting a park in there. They don't have a say. The district board works in your behalf to run the district. You guys need to decide how you want to run the district. That's why it's.
And at some point, we're gonna need a document to approve, so we're just, yeah, it might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but. Yeah, we're getting a document that hopefully at some point we can all come back together and say, yep, this is what we want to approve or not, so otherwise, we're just throwing ideas around.
And Ted, didn't you say the last one was done in 2017?
2017.
Yeah, so that's, I mean,
And rightfully so, it needs, obviously in 2017, there are virtually no paid employees. I mean, that's the biggest change. You know, now the board has become an employer, essentially.
And somebody had made the comment that, so we talked about the budget stuff, but if it's unbudgeted, hey, chaos just broke loose. We have an unfunded something that we just don't have room in our undesignated funds, whatever it is. We need more money for the municipalities. That's why it was unanimous, because no one budgeted for it. And so everybody needs to have a say over that. Because everyone's budget is gonna be impacted if they didn't budget for it. Something's gonna get cut.
But I just want you guys to know that from the town of Brooklyn, we're not in favor of the financial book. I really think that as a joint board, we all have a say and we all need to cooperate. However, having said that, I'm a pretty small potato in here, so, but you want to know what my objections are? That's my objection.
Well, you say every board has majority. Share.
That we should all cooperate.
Well, I'm saying like everybody has the same amount of
And
votes.
to the village's crash, if you guys had heartache, then that should have been ironed out. You know, long before voting time, you might have still voted no, but at least you kind of understood to just negate your opinion. That's not right. But to negate anybody else's opinion isn't right either. So.
But do you say then everybody has 20% of the vote and that's it? And you need
Look,
80%?
Another joint board.
Yeah.
There's 5 municipalities. Brooklyn's one of the largest one. Everyone has a vote. Majority.
Same share?
Yeah.
Same share.
And we have some very small municipalities. Their vote is as important as our vote.
Does it? Is it majority? Like, is it not majority? Is it unanimous?
No, it's majority. But we talk about things and we don't always agree, but we have conversations before then. It does sound like here, there's a lot of bad blood. And this is why you guys have written it up the way you have, but you want my opinion, that's my opinion. I don't approve, I don't agree with that. I think we should all cooperate and get along. So, you know.
No, yeah, I agree.
We don't read it.
I agree that we all need to get along. And if we could come up with a fair way to do it that everybody's happy with, 100% agree. And I think we all need to work together and not have animosity, 100% agree with that. But how it is now, without changing something, it just doesn't. And we'll always have animosity if the system stays the way it is.
There's gonna be animosity. Yeah.
I guess what else needs to be, and yeah, I guess what else needs to be changed in here for recommended approval? Obviously, I think the percentage of the budget conversation is really the hang up, so.
There was a request for 25% fund,
Undesignated fund.
I mean, that can't happen overnight, obviously.
No.
Yep, we've been criticized for not having enough agreement, so over the years, so.
We are just now getting to ours, so, no, I think. As long as your intent is working on it and you're doing it, I think that's all that matters. It's not you need to get 25% January 2nd. Or January 1st, that's not.
I think this really helps define, because again, for 30+ years I've been involved, whatever's left in there's really never been, and Paul Zilli will strike me down there's really never been a policy that says, okay, where that money goes, or one that's been abided by over all these years. So, if it goes to, if there's $500,000 in the account at the end of the year, some of that, we should put some of that aside for a rainy day in case something does happen. The rest of it, then go ahead and with district board approval, or whatever, go ahead and spend that if there's an item that we need to buy. But there's never been a written policy that states that. So I think that's what we're trying to do here. Granted, it's not gonna happen overnight, probably with the 25%, but it's a goal to work towards, a policy, so.
I don't know for sure, but I bet that the auditors said something similar in their audit report too, because they usually.
And they're gonna want a policy in here stating what you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be like, so if that gets adopted as a part of a new agreement, that there's gonna be a 25% fund balance, like, those are the marching orders. So then the district board can go back and develop, a plan for getting there. So maybe every year in the budget, they put in, a line item to benefit the fund balance for 10 grand for both fire and EMS, so 5 and 5. So there's not a huge impact, but then it'll grow incrementally. You can show the intent to work towards meeting that goal. And then when the audit comes around, you'll be able to see the undesignated fund balance and what percentage that is of your total budgeted expenditures. And, if you go over the 25%, then you can put it, use the next year's revenue to offset the budget, or you can use it for the purchase of, whatever equipment needs to be purchased, whatever, so long as it's the cushion effect.
So part of the revision that's going to, is a capital audit gonna be required or just the operation?
Audit, everything.
So we spent $18,000 last year on the operational budget audit, and we didn't do a capital. So it'll be a significant, and it was discussed in the January meeting and boards have it's been approved, I guess. And we say you get dinged for it, but
Yeah.
how do you get dinged, or, I mean, how do they explain that process, I guess?
Yeah, no, I mean, they just mention it in their auditor's opinion. There's like I said, 3 or 4 things we always get mentioned for, and I'm sure like any of you guys get audits in your municipalities, it's the same way. You get dinged for like having a small office, there's not, separation of duties in the financial department and stuff like that. It's kind of the same thing. It's just a mentioned deficiency that we have, that we don't have a complete audit for all of the financial interests that we're involved in. And they specify out the fire district in ours too. And like, there's things like password policy is one thing we've been working on for a couple of years. It's been low in the totem pole. We just need to do that. So other little things, but yeah, so we'll continue to get that little blurb in our auditors.
It would be a significant expense, actually, the auditor that made the presentation said he didn't see real need for it.
Yeah, I mean, our auditors do. So I don't know what to tell you. I can set up our auditors with that auditor and they can maybe talk it out and have like
That
a
would be $18,000, right?
match. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know how
I
expensive it
mean,
would be.
there goes some operating capital.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you. that There'd be expense to it, especially since it hadn't been done before. So it's doing everything from scratch. And then, like I said, like the how often you get it done from there on out, it's also gonna have an impact. You said the less man hours they have to spend on it every year to catch up, the less the impact is gonna be budgetarily. So 18 grand, I imagine if you had the same auditor come in next year and do it just for a single year, it'd be considerably less than the 18 grand. So I imagine, yeah, the first year for a capital audit, it might be a little bit more intensive because they have to go through the depreciations and all that kind of stuff. And I get that, but then every after that, it's just updating a calculation, updating a formula. That's and you know, adding any added, like we get the fire truck, putting that in and then taking the old fire truck out, that kind of stuff. So there would be an expense, I don't know what it would be to get started, but then hopefully that would be less, you know, year after year. Kind of like with what we got going on too. Our audit for the village is like,
90.
yeah, it was like, well, 80 or 90 grand years prior. I think it's like 50 or 60 this year.
So we have to do every separate fund, and we have marine funds, and then the water department and sewer department and our CDA fund, like, they all at the time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Dude, I got
Lucky,
auditors,
yeah.
I got auditors in the office. I got 3 auditors in the office, like digging in and making a nest. Like for 3 or 4 days in January, where I've got like them emailing me, texting me, and then coming to my office in a train just to get information and everything. I can't breathe.
And that's not even.
Quite simply, I mean, we're fighting budgets all the time, whatever you.
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, to help you, want a capital audit, yet the board as a whole voted in January not to do a capital audit. But for your purpose, it doesn't affect our township audit, I guess. You know, so we're gonna spend 18,000 for an audit. That really doesn't include it, I guess, doesn't.
I doubt it would show a damn thing, but it's just that, like I said, a box that needs to be.
Safety measure, and then we're spending more.
I mean, but it adds to the operational budget, and then you're gonna get you more than the 1%.
Yeah, I'm not
So you're
disagreeing with you.
you're demanding these different
I would,
add-ons, yet complain about the budget.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Like, I understand.
I mean, you can't have it both ways, you know?
let's take that original vote out of not doing the capital budget. That was the past. The board today is saying they want an audit, an annual audit. The board is saying that. Regardless of what motions were made, that's what the request is. And it hurts us if we don't. That's and we're being blunt, like it's all true, like that's why.
This is just a part of doing business. I mean, especially government business.
Our auditor never demanded that. We have the same auditor,
What do you use?
Johnson.
We don't use Johnson.
Same auditor as the EMS.
They said maybe we can
We'll
get
just our
our
auditors
auditors
to
to
work
work
for
together.
Johnson.
And they can figure
That's an expense that is an unnecessary 18,000. I'm just using 18, that's what the operation.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be.
Like, I totally
worried
understand.
about.
I got a budget for a $60,000-$70,000 one every year. I get it. Like, it's, yeah, I get it.
But it doesn't help us out at all. The minute there's 4 other municipalities that.
It does,
Well, it doesn't affect us.
you should know that your money's being spent properly and that
Well, it's not about as your buildings, that stuff. It's
it
not,
matters.
it's not fluid.
Everything matters.
We have a list, we have an appendix on it.
I'm just saying, everything matters and it's better just be safe than sorry.
So we have.
Well, I mean, there's another thing too, like, I would have to ask my auditor how deep it gets into it, but I know that like the insurance ratings, municipal insurance ratings. They're based off of the status of the equipment as well. So like where the equipment is in the life cycle, what type of equipment is available to the department, like their staffing, all that kind of stuff feeds into that. I mean, the higher the rating. I think it's actually the lease rating, it's like golf, but the lower the rating. So if you get like 3, 2, 1, your insurance rates municipality wide go down.
You don't see it in your budget.
Huh?
You don't see that in your budget.
No, but our residents do. So it's,
They don't see it either.
I don't know.
What else? Like, I'm not trying to be the horse here, but if we can't, like, I'm trying to say what else, because if, when we come back and we haven't solved the major issues, we haven't accomplished anything. Like, we need, like, if we left here tonight with 3 items, it'd be understanding that when those 3 items got changed, you all would be ready to approve it and be done.
Yeah, but we don't, each of the municipalities here doesn't have a full. No, well, I don't know, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
Here, right?
Well, that's
So
not-
we're gonna have to take a document back to the board and say, hey, what do you think? That should almost be the next step, is you do another draft. We go back to each of our boards and say, hey, this isn't necessarily for approval, but what do you object to? I mean, I don't see how you do it otherwise.
Would it be helpful if somebody came to your boards to talk about it?
Prior to.
In front of them, like when you present it to them, would it be helpful if somebody was there to say, kind of help explain why it was made?
Are you talking about this draft?
Yeah, like once the new changes is in front of you.
Oh, okay, the next draft.
Yeah,
It wouldn't hurt, but it may not be necessary. I guess it's what the way to put it. I mean, I think that we could have the discussion at the board level, each of our boards, and it's either gonna fly or not fly.
but again, if there's still like the budget share is still not flexible and we know. Like if you all are not, if you're leaving this meeting and say, yeah, that budget thing is not going, I guarantee your boards aren't gonna agree with it. So like, you guys need to feel at least comfortable enough to be able to sell something or.
Explain it.
Yeah.
What you mean.
Explain it or just
I
be
mean,
able to
not
say yes.
necessarily sell it, but there's a difference here. You know, I mean, I think that we can reasonably say, here's what the document means. You know, read it, here's what it means.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're
Selling
guaranteeing
it
an
or
approval.
promoting it, but it says. Yeah, I guess my hope is you don't come here and say this, reject it. Like, go back to your board and say, this is a terrible thing, ignore it. So like, what can be done for you guys to say, this is a reasonable document for, we would recommend that you at least consider it. Is what I'm asking.
Right. I mean, I can answer for me, and I'd say, like, next draft, that's what I want to take to them and discuss.
I'm one of those people who was new to the game here, and one thing I think would help immensely, when you come up with a new draft, if you had a way to simply flag the changes that were made,
I can remind.
and so that people can see what it said before, and then, because I'm way behind the game, I haven't followed this for a long time, don't have the history. So it's very hard to even say something meaningful, other than I do sense a lot of resentment in this room, which is not pleasant and which is palpable and, you know, but I don't understand where it's coming from. So that's why I've been sitting here not saying it. But I thought, you made an excellent point. Let's work on this. It's clear it's about the vote situation. It's clear we need to go forward working as a group. And knowing that we're not trying to hurt each other or counteract each other, we all need these services. So that's my 2 cents.
Wholeheartedly agree.
The other thing I would add is, after my board takes a look at it, my attorney has to look at it.
Absolutely.
Before I sign it, so that is gonna delay.
Yep.
So I figure,
And I think my spot
so
is,
you know that.
oh, our attorney will review everything, changes that you guys make recommendations to. It's just, I don't wanna waste our attorney's time reviewing something that the boards don't agree to it, you know? Like, don't say something to your attorney if your board knows I'm absolutely not gonna approve subsection F. And like, don't even have them waste their time reading it, cause if you know you're not gonna approve it, don't send it to them. So like, you know, I don't want you guys to waste your time having an attorney review it if that's not even something you're even going to consider.
Right. But just so you know.
Yeah, well,
that would
absolutely.
be
The process is,
step.
yes, 100%.
I'm just curious what Oregon, what representation you got voting wise in other boards such as this? I mean,
Brooklyn and, Oregon.
what's your voting, how many, what's your?
Oh, it's, I would have to double check. I'm not sure. I think it's one person and I think it's, same percentage. I don't think there's a different percentage, but I'm not 100% sure on that at all.
So you contract out to Oregon or Brooklyn?
We're part of the district.
Part of our joint district,
Yeah.
there's one vote. You
Yeah.
got one vote, I got one vote.
Yeah, and I think this, I
That's
think
true.
it's the same with
Or
Oregon.
I think it's.
Both with
It's
Open.
true with both ends. One vote for the.
Are you all equal size roughly?
We're the
No.
second
No.
biggest in OFED. And I'm not sure in Brooklyn, where's that played down?
I'm not
The
sure where
city
you
of
guys.
Oregon and you each have equal voting.
Say that
The
again.
city of Oregon.
No, could
Yeah, Village of Oregon. I'll double check, but
We need to double check. I haven't been involved in fire, I've got assignments on other things, so this is very new to me. I haven't been participating, I've been on the board about it, and enhancements.
I want to say that possibly the Village of Oregon has got some members on the.
I think you're right.
We've got one, and
And then it's Roslyn,
I'll check.
it's Roslyn. Yeah. And I think the village does have two, and then the rest of us have one. I think that's.
But I'll check.
Montrose?
Does appear that, yeah, what everyone else has been bringing up, the voting percentage is gonna be a hard sell. Yeah.
So how do we make that say? Like, I have not made any change, like, right now, yours presented to the board the exact same thing that you have. I'm not making any changes because we haven't made any recommendations yet. I guess what is the recommended change?
Well, my recommendation is everybody's got to vote. There's five of us, we all vote.
So what we have now?
And we get along. And if somebody's not in favor of something, that they get their time to say their grievances, why they feel this way, if it's money related or if it's office related, and hear them out.
Yeah, having three separate municipalities that would have veto power would make it very difficult to get things done. For one, could act separate from the group.
Do you feel, and I'm not trying to lead anyone anywhere, but do you feel like this is not gonna be able to come to a resolution? Do we feel like the tension room is not allowed? Like, do we feel like we're just gonna be spinning our wheels and nothing ever is gonna be changed?
At our annual meeting in April, this discussion came up quite a bit. And really we talked about, and we had probably 15 people there. There's a motion on the books by a resident, a second and unanimous decision. Keep the voting authority the way it is.
Keep the agreement, I just written down.
And that was, I had a regular meeting, we had only 15 people.
No, does Montrose feel the same way? Like, I don't want us to be wasting our time coming to agreement if we're never gonna be able to come to agreement.
Like you just told you, they're not gonna be able to.
Yeah.
That's their annual meetings. I don't know if you know, but it's town, the annual meeting, that's their edict.
All right.
Yeah. Their annual meeting, all residents get to vote.
Right.
Everybody who shows up. And
Equal
so
power, yeah.
those are his marching orders. So it ain't gonna happen.
Okay.
I mean, granted, the people at the annual meeting weren't privy to all this discussion, some detail about it, but we tried to We tried to review the document as presented to us and presented as the doc presented to us. Of both each other.
But you need to follow it, I get it.
Ted, do you know, is it any of the town, board members, in an annual meeting, that type of vote binding, or is that advisory?
Advisory.
Oh, so it's advisory.
There's some things are binding, but
Yes, right, and I thought it was outside.
Yes, simply.
So are we keeping the band together or what? We keeping the band together?
Right.
I honestly, like, we're just sitting here spinning wheels, like,
Yeah.
like our board is, well, at least was, and I'm relatively sure still is pretty close to unanimous in that this is what's needed. So I don't mean to bring down the room, but I'm a realist too.
Look, I mean, I'm just trying to take a step back and look at it in very simple terms and it's getting tired. So if this sounds a little rough, please take it with a little grace. You don't want to be dominated by Belleville. Understandable. You're afraid that Belleville will dominate the district. You need some defense against that. Belleville feels they need some defense from essentially the rest of you taking the wallet for a spin. I mean, that's what it breaks down to in its simplest terms.
It's a town versus village thing that constantly plays out.
It's,
Oh, I don't know if that's.
how do we make this so that you have a reasonable defense against Belleville taking over, and how do we at least have some say that the people who aren't paying for, or soon won't be paying for the majority, you soon be paying for a minority of this, and all of you together versus the one entity paying for the majority. Your incentive to do whatever with that is or your perspective on those monetary ventures is going to be very different from ours. How do we defend against both those things? And I'm just saying it that sort of bluntly because I at the core, that's what the issue is. And just to put it in simplest terms, can we find protections for those two things from both perspectives? Maybe we can't, I don't know, but
So I don't know if this
let's
is,
not talking around it. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a direct answer to your question, but so what if we took the idea of a shorter term provision for some kind of review, provision for objections, and took the existing document, except changed the voting structure, kept the existing voting structure, kept all the other changes in the existing, in the proposed document. So you'd have two pieces then, right? So you'd have the document that's proposed now, take out the 60%, whatever, push in the existing voting structure. So really what you got then is a transition, potentially a transition from existing to something else, or potentially a confirmation that the existing voting structure works.
I think that's the problem, is we cannot come to agreement that the existing structure works. This board says that existing structure can't work, it will not work.
That makes sense.
So
That makes the village false.
that's, I think that's,
We still don't have our protection.
No, we don't.
This is a circle we're in.
Yeah.
It's like Ian said earlier, we are limited in the amount that we can levy per year to meet the budget request. And
Well, so are we, so are all.
Yeah.
Right, this is not,
Right.
not exclusive to the village.
I think you guys are worried about a veto, but the last 2 years functionally, we were vetoed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are worried about something that actually happened here. We're like, please, no, don't pass this budget. We can't afford it. Passed. Please, no, don't pass this budget. We can't afford it. Passed. And so, like, I get that there's an imagined threat, and I get that it's kind of made that way. The annexation and everything, all that doesn't help. Okay, towns versus villages, it's always a thing. Always a thing. It's always gonna be a thing. There's not, we're gonna say in this room that's gonna make that any different. Everywhere I've worked, every single place been the same. So that's why I'm trying to boil it down to the problems. Like, these are the problems, like the one paramount problem, all these little problems is the fact that the village is paying more than each individual municipality. Some lumped together, and it's gonna continue to grow that way. And we can't do that with, you know, giving out blank checks for a budget, because, you know, what happens the year, whether it be this year or next, I realize all great intentions. Like I said, 800% in 8 or 9 years. Yeah, there was 1 or 2 years where it was 5-10%, but the rest was well over. Can't keep giving out a blank check. It's one of those years we're gonna end up having to cut a cop. We're gonna end up having to cut a DPW person, or we're gonna end up having to cut a service altogether. And so it has very real effects on us. And I realize you guys got your budgetary constraints too, but the fact that we have lived it the last 2 years, where we almost had to get rid of a person last year just to make budget because of the increase that we saw. And so while you're worried about a veto that might happen, possibly, we've lived it. And so we've had to deal with that. We're not talking about any, we made it pretty clear, I think, that the intent anyway, like I said, not speaking for you guys, but I never believed the intent was to take it over as a department. I never thought the intent was to impose anybody's will. I think it's great that everybody has a seat on the board, regardless of whatever that vote may be, because I love people who love ideas. Ask anybody I work with, they'll say that. I think it's important to have input from everybody, especially people that are being served. But, you know, can't move forward. And there's not a thing in this room, in this world, that's going to change how towns feel about villages, whatever. It just, we've been a part of the district for 30 some years. So can we keep doing that? And just like concede that maybe the people who are getting taxed more should have more of a say than people who aren't getting taxed as much. That's all. Nobody's talking about getting rid of tenders. Nobody's talking about any of that kind of stuff. That was a big argument in the last place. I won't get into it, but.
And so I hear what you're saying, but I also heard across the room saying, let's not think about the past.
Yeah, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's an awesome way to think. It's an awesome way to think, but it's not, it's.
Well, I mean, it wasn't me who said it. I was not the one who said it.
No, I know.
Caved into-
I know. And I agree with the sentiment, but the fact of the matter is you people that have been on the boards for 15, 20, 30 years. That's just not feasible. Like their relationship with the village and the other board members in the region and everything, that's just part of them. So we're a group of individuals representing people. I would love if we could just, I have kind of an easy way of emotionally cutting ties with things, but.
Does it sound like we're at somewhat of agreements to try a 3-year trial with the 1 year, like a notice at 2 years to revise?
I guess would. Yeah, like if we use the budget allocations as it is in this current agreement, maybe we make it short the first 2 years, try it, see if it works. And if it truly doesn't work, we come back to the table. And then there's actual proof that something didn't work.
And I suggested more or less that, but using
The current,
voting structure of the current agreement, yeah.
it just, yeah.
I know, but we're gonna have to make a break somewhere, right?
And,
If it's not gonna fly, it's,
and that's the only reason why we're at the table.
right, but so if,
What's the only reason? Sorry.
The financials, that's why we're at the table. That's what brought all of this together. And that's us laying on the table what we care about. Honest. is what's- Obviously, there's changes in here that's just better practice. But the core issue that the village board has directed me to write about, look into is financials.
so I know, I mean, I know that you've got, bigger dollar amounts at stake, right? Towns don't have, maybe not the actual dollars, but as a percentage of our budgets, it's not nothing. You know, Oregon needs to buy another truck. Like, holy shit, where are we gonna get, you know, where are we gonna contribute to the 1.5 million that it's gonna cost? So there's I almost guarantee that every single town in here has got some kind of pressure that's especially related to capital equipment. That's really difficult to cover. So I mean, I know you know this, but the towns have got financial pressure too. And very little resources, especially in the municipalities that have no growth.
Yeah.
So I think we're shooting for the same thing.
Yeah. I think yeah.
I don't know how to pull that off, but.
If I did, I would have done.
And right back to the
But
beginning.
I think that's the conversation though, is if we can't come to an agreement, and maybe the village board needs to have a quick conversation of what extra like, I don't know, priorities are still lying of what they believe and having that conversation, but the last board conversation was not. We have to change the funding mechanism. That cannot, a new agreement cannot be approved without that. Or moving forward cannot.
It doesn't have to be exactly this. Hell, I have an idea. But that's just the
Yeah.
best we can come up with.
I mean, the original, first time we met, there was a whole other calculation in place that changed the actual amounts that were financed.
There were like 3 or 4 different calculations.
Right.
Yeah, we put calls in, we put.
And we scrapped that to maintain consistency with the existing document.
The other options is you have unanimous vote, everybody. One vote per municipality and it's unanimous or it's not. Everyone has the exact same share, nobody's treated differently. Can't argue anything. They're all paying 20%. Or you're all voting shares.
Equal.
You're voting for now.
I like it.
Yeah, me too. Put that in. That's you got unanimous decision, you have a percentage vote, you keep it as it is, we know we can't keep it as it is, so you really have to choose.
There no way to, I don't want to use the term poison pill. But is there no way to make it a little bit painful to stop it from being a 4-on-1 vote or whatever it is? Is there no way to make that a little bit unpalatable? You know what I'm saying?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I don't know. Can we explain? So it,
Give me the blue pill, Morpheus.
what's that?
Give me the blue pill.
Ashley?
It was brought to my attention, what about 50% instead of 60%?
For the voting threshold?
Would that be a little bit even more even still?
I don't even think that
Can
was.
you talk?
Ashley was talking about, we have the 60% right now. What if we lower that to 50? What if we lowered that to 40 as a
No.
voting threshold? But I think the point is you still have to have, it still won't change your, as long as you're above 20%, it doesn't matter. Because if we have 21%, Montrose and Exeter both have 21%.
Is the 80% safe? That number is safe.
Do it at 70.
Well, if we put 70, somebody, you would still have some veto power in there, so.
No, but
We would keep you talking 80%, but.
it doesn't have to be technically 80. But again, as long as it doesn't solve the, well, 70 would make more people have more say. 60 would have more, people have more say.
I mean, to pass
But it
the
can't be
budget,
60 of municipalities, that's.
to pass the budget amendment for the village, we have to have a 2/3 vote, right?
Yeah.
So that's usually, it's either majority, supermajority, or 2/3 is what most, these, if you look at other agreements that I've looked at. So if we said it had to be 2/3 vote based on the percentage, that still would, if we still base on percentage, we're back to the same issue, I'm guessing.
Based on percentage, based
But if you base it on municipalities,
One vote, one people.
then we're exactly where we're
We're
at.
still in the same boat.
Nothing's.
20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, and be done.
That's what we have.
Everybody has
have
one
now.
vote. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we had.
Problem is that there's,
So there's five municipalities and everybody's got one vote.
there's us that pay over 40%.
Right, I get that. I didn't realize that everybody was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's for capital. Not for- Operating is 80% of the municipalities.
We reached out to other departments. I mean, talked to Orion, but I mean, this gotta be a common problem everywhere. I mean, should we spend some time and talk to Evansville or Monroe and see how they,
I don't think not districts do.
Gonna
Yeah.
go well.
Most.
Every village feels very similar to how our village. feels. You're not gonna get sent different sentiments from us and the two municipalities that I work with. They've both gone through this and the one that I work with, wanna keep pulling out completely and restarting their own department. So, like, they said F it all and we're doing it ourselves. So like, if you're talking village wise, you're gonna get the same feelings that the village has. Towns are probably gonna have the same feelings that you guys have. It's just, and that's where Ian was kind of talking about with the village town thing. It's just. We can look at different solutions, but they're all kind of came up with the same problems.
Brooklyn, Oregon, from what they've said, don't follow what you just said.
But they're not. That's what I'm saying. Now,
Too close to municipalities are not in line with what you just said.
So it sounds like the village is saying we can't afford the way we're going down now. That's right. Which then also tells me that we can't afford to do this on our own.
well, yeah,
It would be extremely painful.
it means it means the capital budget that I drafted, I'm changing every dime of that.
Cause if
Can we do it?
Do it on, the Bell's gonna do it on their own, fire and EMS, if
If
they're
we-
gonna have an over $1 million budget just for fire and EMS.
If we had to do it, we could figure out how to do it. It's just, it would be very, 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 very painful.
So we can't figure out how to do this and have some pain versus very, 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 very painful.
That's why we're here.
What we're trying to do.
Well, we've spent 2 hours basically going in a circle.
Yeah.
It's like running a treadmill. There's
Yeah.
gotta be, we gotta figure this out.
Agreed.
Keep in mind,
Again,
we've been doing this for a
It's
while.
been a negotiation.
New one here, that's what I'm asking.
This has been a give and take, or was, I think intended to be a give and take at first, and, you know,
And we're just at the,
And
we're at
now
that one
everyone wants to take
item
their
that we
voice
just
and go,
can't.
yeah.
I think if we amended all these other things, we'd agree it, minus subsection, whatever. Like, the language isn't bad except that section. It's the only thing that we're disagreeing on, right? And that's, everything else, yeah, we can live, we can take, whatever. So,
We chose the 60% cap as, that was what we left the last meeting with.
Yeah.
So if that capped percentage comes lower, does that make it more palatable? And then what would the number be?
If we can't agree on this tonight or even the next meeting, is this gonna revert back then to last year's budget?
yeah, there's
Can't seem to go anywhere?
no, it stays with this year's agreement, with the current agreement.
Oh, so this is a contract, a whole different
This
contract.
is just the
This is
agreement.
a brand new agreement.
We're not even to
I'm new to
budget.
this, I'm still trying to catch on.
You know, I guess in my opinion, 80% to pass the vote is the threshold to cross, and it's probably the correct one.
What do we require for, about 3/5, right? For a regular budget, or is it just simple majority?
super majority, isn't it? Two-thirds.
2/3?
I think you'd say it's 66.67%,
What?
66.67%.
And make it better.
That also means I work with each one of you and decide what you like and what you don't like, and it's we're 3 months into our budget cycle already. Like the, department's already got their operating budgets today, like, we are already in it.
What are we doing? Cause I'm out of Diet Pepsi. Right. Y'all make it see.
I guess the big question is, can we come to any type of agreement?
So for the most part, the revisions that they've asked for are
Easy.
easy peasy. Yeah, so what,
Yeah, this.
where are we?
It's the whole.
The budget.
Financial.
The financial.
The financial.
The financial.
The voting percentage is
Yeah.
the sticking point. I mean, the financials aren't even the issue in my eyes. I mean,
No.
we're willing to pay our share, period.
Warren.
Or actually, so. It's in,
What,
it's about the ability for any municipality to force the conversation of, you know, a hard budget and say why or what and change it.
That's already existing.
No, it doesn't.
But not if,
If you don't take advantage of it, that's on you, but there's discussion, there's open public hearing.
Yeah,
It's already existing, that discussion's available, you just gotta take advantage of it.
So Ted, what you're saying is when they come
That's
back
right,
and
that's right.
vote yes or no to approve the budget, if we as a village board vote no, that's the time we have to stand up and say, this is why we're voting no.
Which we have done the last 2 years.
yeah,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you, the reason you voted no, my recollection, the audit wasn't. That was complete.
that was only one part of it.
That was the reason given for the no vote.
I think Joseph.
But that was-
Remember exactly.
Right, that's,
I don't know exactly. I think Jeff said something about that last year.
that was the only reason given for the no vote. Audit was.
Can I ask, the big two, Exeter, Montrose, do you have a preference? Do you have like a preference to the vote percentage or anything along those lines that would keep us any closer? I think for Brooklyn and for Oregon, okay, we're here. We're here trying to get, but
You matter. You matter.
Yeah, we're 1%. We're never gonna matter.
we got almost 2%.
Almost 2%. Oh, we
I know. Maybe next year.
Legally.
Anything, Roger? Oh, sorry.
Well, just to add to that idea, is there something about the budgeting process itself that could keep people more in the loop ahead of time? Because I was at the meeting, and it was the audit was the problem, so I was there with my board. Well, I didn't even understand that, they're telling me, I'm trying to find my way. But if there would be just some way when you get to that discussion process where you look at specific, how are we on this? How are we on that? I'm just gonna give an example from going to the Oregon meeting. And, we basically listen to the chief, this is the fire. He tells us what to do, and we do it. There isn't a lot of, doesn't seem to be a place for people to have a give and take. We do that at our board meetings when we talk about our budget for the, we have, is there a way to look at how you put the budget together and look at budgets? Is that where this, you might be able to get more dialogue so that the two sides didn't feel so at odds with each other?
I think it could hurt. Yes. But I think when, as Gary had mentioned, when they had asked for the chiefs to talk to them, they got criticized by the town saying you don't have the right to do that. So when they asked,
The chiefs don't have the right?
no, the village didn't have the right to ask the chiefs to come in. So when the village did that and asked, hey, can you help explain this? They only got criticized for doing that.
The village did.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, see, I sort of feel that it would be.
Criticized.
We're not,
They got,
District,
Trust me, it came up at meetings, at the committee meetings, the subcommittee meetings, so. It's never been specifically said at a board meeting, but, we've been told we were out of line to request a chief or chiefs to come to our meeting to explain the budget. And we can request anybody that we
I
want.
never got that information from me.
Well, I didn't say it was you, Roger.
Well, you.
I'm not gonna point a finger, so,
But if it didn't come from the town, if it didn't come from me, it didn't come from our township.
okay, it came from the board. Or a board member, a district board member.
And he spoke out of line.
and I think this is.
Glad
where
you
the-
said that, Roger.
I think
I
this is
agree
where the
100%.
heartache lies, that there's so much emotion.
Pardon me?
I said, this is where the heartache lies, like.
Yeah.
There's so much distrust and dislike that it's
It's
hard.
almost like
I
it's a
mean,
power struggle.
I-
It is
I-
a power
I
struggle.
mean, there's a power struggle.
Totally.
Well, everybody knows where I live, right?
Yep.
Okay. I've been there for 75.5 years. And the town of Montrose, I've been on the board there for 48 years. And I can't believe we've always worked well with the village of Belleville. And, this just seems to be so odd that we have all these little hitters all of a sudden.
Well, I think part of the problem, Roger, is we have seen such an increase in our budget.
And we have too. When we get our requests from Dane County, which are usually just astronomical. We don't have much say in but as Dane County passes by us.
That's exactly where our village board is at now. We don't have any say. We just, district board says this is what we want. The village board says, we don't think so, because we don't have enough money in our back pocket to pay this. We're basically told, too bad, so sad, nothing you can do about it. We made our decision, bye-bye.
Yeah, and we do the same thing. I mean, we get the taxes from the school district. And it doesn't even, includes Belleville, Oregon, Blair's, MATC, it's all passed down to the town of Montrose. We can't call them back and say, hey, cut your budget by another $50,000. We can't say that to them.
Neither can the village of Belleville.
That's what this vote is supposed to
And
allow.
so-
That's right.
So that's,
So are you saying that method is what you prefer?
Pardon me?
Is that what you're saying, that method? So if you're saying you have to stick with it, we have to stick with that in this
No,
scenario?
I'm just saying that's how we are treated too.
Same with the county.
Just because,
I know.
the past has
I know.
been done that way, doesn't mean we just continually follow it. I mean,
What could the village do to help you guys feel like they're not just taking, like, say the budget is approved, like the contract is approved as it is written? What could the village do to help you ease the pain that they don't wanna just take over? And if they do care and wanna learn more and are interested to know actually what the budget is going on? Like, how can the village show that? If the village literally can't show that, then the conversation needs to, can't. But how can we build that trust to show that, hey, we actually care about what Chris is presenting to us? We're open, we're coming with open ears and we're wanting to approve something.
Well, maybe we should talk about these budgets before the actual annual meetings that we have every year.
Good God, yes.
Here.
Yeah.
They could be a lot.
And then if Belleville's got
Yeah.
a concern saying, we can't approve this because I think there should be $15,000 taken out of here. Well, then let's talk to whoever that budget person is that presented that budget, whether it's the EMS or the fire department, and say, hey,
So I'll just give you a little bit. How our budget works is, the department heads present their grandiose budget and I cut it. I say that we are not doing this until whatever goes on. I don't present a budget to the board unless it's a good budget that they can approve the dang of. Like, but that means I literally gave them their budget instructions today. And we don't approve budget until November 17th. Like, we have now until November 17th to work on this budget. Like, that's a lot of time, but it's not a lot of time.
so do you get from the Department of Revenue, we, in our town,
August,
we get a worksheet.
yeah,
And it actually basically tells you what your budget to not exceed.
Well, yeah, it's a levy limit worksheet, but yeah, so like mid-August, we get our equalized value and all of our, well, most of our shared revenue stuff. So that fills in an awful lot of holes, but we have to wait till then. I mean, we can kind of extrapolate based on what we've seen this year, what we'd like to see in next year's budget, but until we get our net new construction, equalized values and shared revenues, we really don't know. Like how much we're gonna have coming in.
But you work off of those worksheets, do you not?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we do too.
Part of the difference is that, at the township level, we can get bids to do projects, you can't get a bid to, really get a bid for fire EMS service, right? We're locked into the local service. And at a state meeting not too long ago, they said, really, it's gonna be tough, especially living in the Dane County area, to cut fire EMS budgets because it's a very competitive area, especially for EMTs. It's like the school district, how many times that budget get smashed? Never does. So the school and the MATC and the Blackhawk Techs, and fire EMS are kind of at a level that's hard to dispute a lot of what they do because they show the need, and it's for emergency services.
And I don't think we once talked about cutting their budget. We just, it goes back to equal share to what we're paying, equal share of the budget. Not that their budget is too much, not that they're doing a bad job, not any of that. Never once has the board member said, I want to cut their budget. And I'm not lying to you, like, no one has ever said that, ever. No one has ever said that they do a bad job. No one has ever said they don't have good personnel.
Can I ask, like, Montrose and next to it again? Is there anything that would make sense as a transition slash, let's say, testing period? That would, so based on the.
I guess I'm open to anything right now.
Okay, but.
Honestly.
Well, you know what I mean? So it may not be the perfect agreement, but if there's a review period after a year or two or whatever, would there be something that would be acceptable? And Brooklyn too. Everybody's part of this. If Kathy, if you're a hard no on the percentage, the weighted vote, then that's the way it is. But is there a possibility of like some kind of interim agreement that leads to something based off that interim agreement?
Well, then you have to have an agreement on the agreement.
You too.
So then you're into the same situation we're in now. If this was gonna all pass and everything was gonna be warm and fuzzy, we'd have made that decision at 20 minutes after 6 and everybody would have been home for dinner. There's a line in the sand right across this room. And I think you need to move on from here and let the district take over on the district's agreement and propose it to all the municipalities and go from there. Because this is absolutely not working. I've said in 2 of these meetings, this just.
But it's a waste of time to go back to the district board. If the municipalities will not agree to something, it's a waste of time. Then they're wasting their time. I don't want that. Like, if the marching orders was to go back to the district board, work it out, but you already know that the current method will not work. This side has already told you that, and that side's already told you this. Like, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, but that's where you get back to where everybody has an equal vote on what the district presents to the municipalities. And you take the chances on what the district has written. I guess it's kind of interesting to me that the village got this big proposal. You guys must be spending a lot of money on this. And I don't know what your gain is on it. We keep going this percentage back and forth and everything. And I just like Gabe, just explain to me if it stays the way it is and it goes the way that the village wants it, what's the plus and minuses for the village? What do you gain and lose? What do you lose by leaving it the way it is now, and what do you gain by having the agreement that?
What we lose if it stays the same is we're spending a lot more money, we have no say over how it's spent, not zero. So that's what we,
Not zero, not zero.
well, we have no say,
You have a vote.
but if all of the small municipalities all say yes, and we're paying the largest share, we have no say. Not, you could completely say discussion, budget conversation over, it's done. That's as it lays out right now, and that's how it's worked. So that's what we lose. If we, with this, what we gain from this conversation is our voice matters. Our residents are being paid for what, and their voice goes into what budget conversation is. So that's what, it's simple.
Right, how would you want your personal business structured, or you've got a partnership in your investors and who, you know, who gets to say the most? What, you know, in that situation, I mean, if you extrapolate into the private sector. So, you know, that's how corporations are structured with stocks, and you get to vote the number of shares you have. I mean, it's the way the private world works. I mean, I know we're not in the private world, but,
So where do we go from here?
$1 million question.
Actually, a few $1 million.
well, we've got a couple of revisions. We're stuck on the voting part.
Table it for,
Well, no, it's gotta move forward.
Yeah.
So there's gotta be some action. We can't just let it sit and die.
And the Belleville residents cannot keep picking up the tab and not get any choice or votes on this matter. It's ridiculous. I mean, they did this back in the Civil War, taxation without representation. That's the way Belleville is right now. We get 2 votes. You guys get 2 votes. You get 2 votes. Belleville and, or not Belleville, Brooklyn and Oregon get 1 vote. But we're paying the biggest share. That's ridiculous.
give us 3 votes.
We get no choice.
So, but
It doesn't matter what we say, yes or no. Our vote
Max-
doesn't count. You might as well vote in
Maxine,
the
20
garbage.
years ago, it was reversed.
Pardon?
20 years ago, Maxine, it was reversed, where Montrose was paying the biggest share.
I'm not sure
And
because I
we never
wasn't here
complained
then.
about it back then.
But those,
But
we should, we could
time was given to
They should have complained about it.
have, honestly, should have. If I was your administrator, I would have told you to. Like, that's,
Yeah,
it's not fair to your residents that you didn't.
20 years
No.
ago, the budget was literally 1,000% less.
Well, that's what I said, the whole situation was different back then.
Yeah.
right.
But money's money then too.
So I got a question. How, if we approach the voting structure the same, you know, if you pay so much, you get the largest share. How would that be different if it was structured based off of portion of your budget contributed to the fire district?
Like, the majority,
Like, for example, I don't have the numbers off my head. Montrose contributes 5% of our budget to the fire district. Belleville contributes 15%. You know, and that's how the voting weight is assigned.
Isn't that kind of how
you
we're
guys
trying to get?
do,
I
So
I
make it
don't know
a
the numbers
level
off the top of my head. It's just
no, I
kind of discussion is.
I think we can go down that route.
It's an idea.
But my only question that I'm asking is like, do you guys have special revenue funds like forestry? Like, do you guys have, is it just a general fund for towns? And this is what I mean, not know,
It
like,
can be anything. Everybody's different.
are you all, like,
They have the exact.
like, I'm just trying to like, do you, like, make it the fairest level, like, if you talk about just portion of the fund, we have millions of dollars out of our utilities. Do you include utilities or do you not include that? Do you include just operating? What? They don't have utilities. We do, so that's the difference. Like, I'm
They
just
have
trying
the
to,
exact same financial mechanisms that we have otherwise. Like they still have the ability to have every type of fund would be.
But do you get where I'm coming from though, is how do you make it the levelest? Do you just do general fund? Portion of general fund?
How do you keep it apples?
How do you keep it apples to apples? Cause if you
Right,
could
because
include us
You
having sewer and water
can't keep it
utility,
apples to
what?
apples. I don't know that you could keep it apples to apples. There's a million different rabbit holes to it out.
Why not? But that's better.
Like we'd be here for a month going through everything. Like we have to go through like each individual service that's provided, how much they spend on that service, what percentage of.
Okay, so would you just say general budget? Like, how do you determine what budget? Do you include utilities?
Well,
No.
I believe that would work actually in our disadvantage even more.
That's what I'm trying to
Because-
figure out.
Because if we have a $10 million budget, just picking a number, and, the percentage of that goes to EMS versus the percentage of a different municipality with a much smaller budget, our number is gonna be tiny.
What if you did it by percentage of what was levied? Because our utilities aren't levied. Our utilities are ratepayers.
Yeah.
Everybody's levied. But again, that's levied. We're choosing to spend our tax dollars on special revenues. The village board could say, we aren't doing that. That's a choice, a conscious choice that they have made. That's a conscious choice that they could make and put a special revenue and allocate tax dollars to it. And our special revenues are plugged into our tax levy calculation, so we could easily make that calculation that fits.
Over the course of the last 20 to 30 years, our EMS and fire budget at our level has grown like 5% to 30% of our budget. And I visited one of our state legislators here some years back. I said, why? It's really raising heck with our revenue. I suggested that we be allowed to put emergency services on our tax bill, much like you do garbage pickup, and have its own taxing authority so that the people can see what they're paying for EMS and fire, what county against our levy. It'd be a separate, much like your garbage is, your.
You can do it with
You
fire,
do it
you
for
can't
fire,
do it with EMS.
But it's.
Yeah.
They must solve the levy limit problem, is they lost what people see, how much they're actually paying for.
Yeah, no, I agree, yeah. I said, I don't know why they get it for fire, but not for EMS, and that's always gonna baffle me, because it's the numbers of the EMS.
Take it off our budget, lamp, and put it on.
Yeah. So, well, it opens up some budget room too, because if you're spending 30%, you can knock it down to the point where you were when they passed the legislation, where it was 27 or something.
Would you calculate the total? Would you calculate EMS versus the whole and fire versus the whole? Or would you calculate the both as all against? Oh, both, right?
I haven't thought that much, I both.
I'm here for comic relief.
It's just thanks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's applied to that.
Yeah, I'm not a student, right, yeah.
So. Okay. What percentage of your budget is fire and EMS? Right, ours would be 9. 9.
Yours?
If you did just operating budget. Of just operating, not the special revenues. That's, I mean, just 9 of tax levy. So I guess you would need to know what your tax levy, not of your budget, but of tax levy. So it would be less than that. But you just need to figure out what that calculation is.
At this point, you all gotta get along, you all gotta work together, we need fire EMS. Want to rate it up to the 60% rule, I guess I'm probably not in favor of it, but it's time to move on. We don't like giving up. I call it veto power, but maybe it's the one municipality, but that's, maybe it's going to be, well, I mean, the bottom line probably gonna change a whole lot, or what we pay at the end of the day.
It's really not.
So let's just move on.
Well, I
Shake
guess
hands.
Roger just kind of made a comment that his board's right here, like, do we separate quick to see if that's something we can sell our boards?
That his board is here.
But if his whole board's on agreement, like,
The 3-year trial. and see. That,
Wow.
in reality, the bottom, at the end of the day, you're probably gonna change that we pay in.
what if we did a 3-year trial run, no extension? Like, don't even give that an option to extend and force us to come back to the table to see if it worked or didn't work.
Only at the end of the 3 years?
Or I guess you could always make the most, like, you could still have in writing that, give a year's notice if it didn't work after the first 2.
So a 3-year notice, a 3-year for what?
3 years, like, if you did a trial run that this, under this new system,
And the 60%?
yeah, is what Ted was saying, and then,
Okay, but again, we're using the 60%, it would be the max that any municipality would ever have. So it's the 45%, we're talking, the 80% is the number we're really, it's the number
80%.
that's causing all the gas pains here is the 80% that you gotta have 80% to pass the budget. Right now, the village only has 45%. We don't go to 60% until we actually reach that percent. If we're at 75% of the equalized value of the population, we're still capped at 60%. So 80% is the number that we need to be, is the number, 60% shouldn't
I don't
even.
think they like 60.
Huh?
I don't think they like 60.
Well, yeah, for sure.
What I was saying was the 3 years, try it, and if it doesn't work, you don't do that automatic extension, that way it forces you to come back to the table and say, it forces you to have the conversation, what worked, what didn't.
You have to do it 3 years so that you get through 2 budget cycles
In an election.
And then,
and an election.
is that something
Well, there's an
we
election
can,
every year.
Yeah.
if I just cut it at 3 years, we make those motions, keep the financials as it is, that's something that you can relatively come back to agree on.
Well, I think we could take to our boards.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not saying,
commit to that, but I can't commit to what their vote's going to.
no,
I think let's do that, send it out and tell all five boards have to take it to their boards and if we come back in 2 months and we're
I
in the
just don't
same
want
house,
us to
then we
be-
get to know where we're at.
Yeah, so what's the time frame on that?
Yeah, we can't go
Well-
5-6 months again like we did last time. I know there was elections in there and everything, but we should be able to do this in a couple of months, I would think. What is the current,
Well, they have to be based on the current.
agreement? What is the amendment process in the current agreement?
We don't have to sign the document. Sure.
Published and.
here's my meeting calendar,
Signature.
all the meetings this week, FYI. Thanks.
Okay, so
I'm looking at it.
that's. Get excited.
I hope you're dead, so. Pretty good. That's right. Yes.
Do you have the agreement with you? Do you have the agreement with you? What is the percentage to change it? What's, to answer your question, what's the percentage to change the current agreement? Just trying to pull my number.
To amend it.
Don't have that.
The current agreement?
Yeah. Probably maybe same, but.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm getting home.
Amendments. This agreement may be amended by a writing unanimously approved by the parties, executed by the proper officers of the parties, supported by a certified copy of a resolution duly adopted by the governing body of each party.
So every municipality has to agree.
That's our current agreement.
So amend.
It's in effect
It's an amendment clause of a current agreement.
So I guess that really gets to it. Everyone has to be in agreement of what we're trying.
Not if you dissolve that agreement, and reenact it.
Yes.
But it's not like they're meeting together for funsies. I mean. Why? It's so true.
My board meets on June 9th. If you can get it to us before then, I'll present to the board.
I'll get it to you.
Ours meets next Tuesday.
We meet tomorrow night.
22 hours.
I will get it to you. I will get it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, but you can't get on the agenda.
What?
Can't get on their agenda.
Oh, it's true. Sorry. Never mind.
You can drop it off at my place as you go by.
I'll throw it.
You got a house.
Like the paper.
Put it in a paper. Paper plane. Box.
There's no time rock to it.
I wasn't considering.
Yes, you were.
I was not.
Okay, so you're gonna make those changes.
I will make those changes. You can't talk.
You're gonna send it to them
Do it.
ASAP. When
I'll
do
get to
we-
you before your Tuesday.
So you got a June 9th. When does it come back this way then?
Yeah. Well, when do you meet June 9th, you meet June.
Is that
Tomorrow.
tomorrow?
It would be tomorrow, so.
July.
July, first Monday in July. First Tuesday.
So we tried to come back like the.
Second Monday in July, would everybody have met? Like, we have this meeting again, second Monday in July.
Second or third.
Who have met?
We can't,
Third Monday.
Third Monday.
Sorry.
20%. Different.
No, we're just gonna have to have a long meeting.
But we, yeah, so
You realize how long our meeting is next time? Because.
I want to try on.
So if we said that, if we met again on July 21st, then all 5 boards had to look at the revised agreement and come back that night and report where we're at that night.
Prepared to sell.
If
I just.
fair,
What day did Gary? say?
Monday, July 21st, I think that's the.
it's the third Monday of July.
Yeah, it was the 5th or 7th, yeah, the 21st.
Amendment passed.
What would be the effective date? My recommendation is January 1st. Keep under the current agreement until January 1st. And then like the current budget process, everything stays the same, January 1st. It's to the. Like, don't mess up this current budget cycle, don't. Give everybody a year to prepare for how it is.
So when do you guys are here this year? The third Monday of,
We meet the first and third Mondays of the month.
because that's where our board looks at it and may have to send it to my attorney,
Okay.
but I'll get back before your
Yeah,
third.
third Monday. So that's when we are gonna meet as a group again.
So 6 weeks from tonight.
Yep, July 21st.
Oh, will you be able to be here for that?
Figure that out.
It'll get posted.
You don't have this money? Oh,
Sorry,
You're having a great time.
I have a wonderful time.
All right, so we're all in agreement with that then, and we can move on
Everybody agreed
Thank
there.
you.
to the agenda. I'd like to thank you all for coming,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
for sure.
Wanna stick around talking about sidewalks?
Books in our town.
What? Come on.
wait, you don't have a sidewalk?
No sidewalks in town.
God bless you.
I think you should add some.
Oh, guy.
Convene in the parking lot.
All right.
All right. New business is discuss and consider right-of-way improvement bid from MHC.
Yes, put on that RFP, we got one response back. They came in addressing everything we put towards them. They didn't cut anything out. Total bid of just over $81,000. Our projected cost for everything we had was $93,900. So they came in actually well under what we'd anticipated.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive.
It was a good.
Based on that conversation, I'll make a motion that we award the contract for the, right away, projects, 2025 right away projects to MH Construction and Concrete.
That's a second.
Wow.
I feel like no one wanted to hang out in,
We all just wanna go home.
All right, I got a motion by Gary,
Seconded by, yeah, Shelley made a.
Pick a name, it doesn't matter.
Like it makes to reflect, damn.
seconded by Maxine. Do we want to add an amendment or just adjust it to not to exceed whatever's in this?
Yeah.
Here,
So
are we all?
I think, yeah, so the amendment, not to exceed the amount in here and that the library, the library sidewalk part of that will come out of, it's a separate line item. All the others will come out of the right of way line item project, or right of way line item in the budget.
There you go.
Yeah, you got it, Carrie.
We all in agreement in that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Catch all that?
Who's
Mr. Clerk?
Did you write it down?
No.
Maren said she really liked that motion, so.
So,
It's just not to
You want-
exceed,
You want me to restate it?
yes.
yeah,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we award the contract, for
That's so fast, that's so fast.
No, just.
right of way maintenance, to MH Construction and Concrete, not to